Bonsoir tout le monde.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this regular and public meeting of the Dieppe City Council on February the 8th, 2021. Without any further delay, we will say, dear colleagues, let's have serenity to change the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, the meeting is called to order. Confirmation by the clerk that we have a quorum tonight. I see all the members who are present. And now, conflict of interest. No conflict of interest to be declared. Thank you. So let's continue. Adoption of the agenda. For the adoption, moved by Mrs. Arsenault, seconded by Mr. Leblanc. On the question. No question. All those in favor say aye. Contrary minded, nay. The resolution is carried as presented. Now, that brings us item 7. Presentation, inquiries, and petition. 7.1, inquiries by the council members for the original RCMP. This being said, Monsieur Gillette, are you with us? Yes. Good evening, members of council. For the members of council, would anyone have a question or comment for Mr. Gillette? Ms. Arsenault.
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
Thank you, Worship.
Monsieur Jolette, je voulais
Mr.
juste vous
Gillette,
demander,
I
est-ce que
just
vous
wanted
avez
to
eu
ask you,
beaucoup de félicitations, beaucoup
did you
de
have a lot
positifs
of
pour la
positive
journée de la
thanks
GRC qui était le
for
1er
the
février?
RCMP day that was February the
J'espère que vous
1st?
avez eu plusieurs fleurs.
Je vous remercie, Mme Arsenault.
I thank you, Ms. Arsenault. I was not aware of the comments, but I will take your nice words and I will share them with my colleagues. Thank you. Anything else from the members of council? If not, Mr. Gillette, if you have anything to add, if not, I just want to say that it is with the return of the orange phase tonight, we'll have more traffic, so we'll be more present, and don't be shy. If there are places that you want us to put more emphasis, just let us know at any time. You have our number and you have my email. Thank you very much, and I hope everyone will be back to work very shortly. You're welcome to stay as always, but we understand if you leave. Good evening. Thank you. 7.2 Public hearing. Amalgamation request rezoning agreement in the Fox Creek Gulf community. So, concerning bylaw 9648-36. So, concerning the amendments to the bylaw 9648-36 conditions, here is the procedure for the public hearing that will take place, just for the information of everyone. Once again, concerning the public hearing on the amendment to the condition of 9648-36, it will be as follows. First of all, the team of the planning and development sector will make a presentation. Then we'll proceed to the reading of the letters of comments that have been received by management. The city has offer to each one of these persons to speak personally in front of council, after which we'll hear the developers spokesperson who ask us to orally speak to the council members. The time of intervention, we ask you to limit as much as possible to 4 minutes per person. First of all, you must identify yourself, who you represent, and if your question or your intervention has already been dealt with, we ask you please not to repeat the same elements or the same arguments repetitiously. The total time for the public hearing is fixed to about 45 minutes. On that, I'll try to manage the time as much as I can, as much as possible. The spokesperson for the trainers can bring some explanation to the elements that will be raised. And a reminder to everyone that on March the 8th, the planning and development sector will provide the analysis of the comments and the notice. A planning advisory committee will be given to the council. And at that time, the members of council can express their comments. This being said, Alexandre, Monsieur Girard, good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Can you hear me? Yes, very well. I will share my screen.
Donc, vous voyez bien mon écran?
You see my screen? Yes. As his worship said, we're now in public hearing for a modification request to the condition of bylaw number 96-48-36 that was adopted in 2003. So the plan of the presentation tonight, we will look at the critical date for the amendment, and we will also mention that to whom we've sent the letters, the neighbors, how many residents would have received a notice of this amendment, and we will also look at the proposal per se. The deadline in January, a date was fixed for public hearing by the council, and on January the 15th, we had a notice that we posted on the website, and we sent some notice to the neighbors, and I'll mention in the next slide that February the 26th, there would be a meeting of the PAC, and they will give their notice. And on March the 8th will be the time to make a decision by the council. And as His Worship mentioned, we will also have a report for you concerning the objection letters that will be received tonight. You have in front of you a map of a piece of land who received the notice. 97 properties were notified. Just another slide to show you which property will be affected by this change, by this application. We wish to amend the zoning 96 to 4836 adopted in 2003, the amendment aim to modify the maximum height proposed for a building of 17 meters by 21.5 to allow 6 stories along the Dieppe Boulevard. So effectively, what is asked here would be to amend the condition 4B that you have in front of you. And what we are proposing as far as amendment is to structure the application or the proposal would be to limit the height of 6 stories along the properties that are along the Dieppe Boulevard. In the next slide, you will see there is also another property that would be affected by the request, but nevertheless, we would ask that the building remain at the present state of 17 meters, which is regulated in the bylaw 964836. The buildings, or what you see in red, would be what is being proposed. The buildings that would have 6 stories, and the building or the form that you see in black will be a building of 5 story. And you see somewhat, it's a type plan that was given to us, consideration of the building and of the proposed plan that was given to us with the green space and the withdrawal of the buildings. Here again, to better structure the proposal, to better explain it, and if it's not part of the notice 110 of PAC, but it's to inform the council as to the discussion that we would have had with the developer up to now. But we ask nevertheless that with this condition, that what would be proposed would have a minimum of 4 stories, and to concrete to have the density along the Dieppe Boulevard as it is prescribed with the municipal plan to densify our arteries. The building would be on a public street in asphalted. That's 5.5 meters must be between the main building and the highway. Will look at 3 story to better structure the proposal, and no space of parking should be developed between the building and the public street. Here again, as far as requirements, we recommend have 25% of withdrawal on the building, 50% of the material that will be used for the building, and the proposed building would have a specific material at 50%. Here is a picture what the building could look like, the 5 story building. This is what it would look like. And with a change of 1 story, here is the size that it could have. Just one reminder of the deadline. The next step will be to send everything to the PAC, the Planning Advisory Committee, for their recommendation, and to bring back to the council for March the 8th. March the 8th. And before we go any further, we distributed a study to the council. It was sent with the presentation that I just made. And just quickly, what we've received, so that you'll be informed of that study. If ever you want to ask a question to the promoter who is with us tonight. So quickly, with 5 stories, when we find ourselves in March at 6 o'clock, on March the 28th, 21, you see the shadow here. There's a shadow. So on March the 21st at 8 o'clock, so the shadow is on the western along the Dieppe Boulevard. On the 21st of April 21st at noon.
Donc, le 21,
So on April the 21st at 4 o'clock. So the change is here.
21 juin,
June the 21st at 5 o'clock. It will be here. The shadow will be here, as you see.
donc le 21
on the 21st of June at 8 o'clock. While it's all shadow, 5 stories, 6 stories.
Encore là ici.
Here again. There.
Le 10 novembre à 10
November the 10th at 10 o'clock in the morning. The shadow is on Dieppe Boulevard.
OK.
Fine.
Donc, je pense que ça fait
So
quand
I
même,
think
donner un peu d'informations
it gives you some information
des étapes.
for the next steps. I will now ask
La lecture là,
just to read the comments that were received and the objections of the position that we receive. The reading to finish the public hearing. Mr. Melanson.
Alors, c'est ça, alors, M. Melançon va procéder.
So Mr. Melanson will proceed with the reading of the letters that were received on this issue. Yes, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council. Stephen Simar, assistant clerk, will help me with the reading of the comments as a first letter.
Amend the maximum authorized height of a building from 17 meter to 21.5 meter to allow for 6-story building unit dwellings. The proposed development of 5 apartment building structures in our community represents a major shift from the existing low-rise townhouses and condos and the close proximity of these apartments to the existing building structures will have a negative impact on many of our current residents of this community. 5-story buildings will already be overbearing under the current bylaw, and the possibility of going to 6 would represent a complete disrespect for the existing community. Second, for many of the resident privacy will be lost, sunlight in their residence and on their properties will be greatly diminished, sunsets will be lost, and property values will be negatively impacted. Third, this proposed development project is a major undertaking by any standards that will change the very core values of our communities that were so critical and important when we made the decision 15 years ago to buy our retirement home. Fourth, we are extremely disappointed that such a major development project would not require, at the very least, a consultation with the community that is directly impacted. And fifth, based on the above noted concerns and the very limited information provided to the residents of our community, we do not support the amendment to bylaw 96-48-36 condition that would amend the maximum authorized height of a building from 17 meters to 21.5 meter to allow for 6-story multiple unit dwellings. With regards, Louise and Roger Léger.
Je te trouve. Bon, là, voilà.
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
Thank you, Your Worship. A letter from Jacques Robichaud, who represents the group. Fox Street Golf Project, public hearing of the amendment of Regulation 96-48-32. And based on the information received and the answer received from the resident community, we don't support the amendment of the proposed amendment. The residents have received recently an official notice of a public hearing with a plan, included plan, and 5 parcels to be developed with their number. The residents were surprised, to say the least, of the possible extended of high density lodging going up to 450 lodging in all. It was contraried by the moment chosen and the way they learn the word of a change of an important block of building living in our community. Our presentation want to bring the hearing on 96 48 36 proposed to the Fox Creek Gulf that will be February the 8th, 2021. We've already given the individual comments of the residents to the municipal clerk. Following discussions with members of the city, Found Homes Limited and three developments are the owner or the promoters of the parcels to be developed since 2005. There's many of us to have bought in this some version area 2021. This remains houses and condos, low density amendment of zoning. Understand from our discussion with the members that the present zoning of the five NIB identified in the amendment regulation 96 48 30 36 allowed the building of multiple lodging buildings. The residential building of high heights would not be compatible with the low density building existing in our community, and contrary to what most of us were led to believe when we purchased our residence. Building, taxes, and evaluation. Many people are really insulted by the lack of transparency by the promoters and the city of Dieppe concerning the Rules 98, 46, 36. How can such a project be studied in our ward without making consultation with the community? Let's understand that the change allows the promoter to build the five building up to 5 stories. However, the building of these five residential buildings is incompatible with the vision and the initial image presented for our ward and promoted by the original promoters. The changes could change the harmony and the integrity to which we expect. We would risk to say that when apartment buildings are built, especially in single family dwelling, that can change the dynamic of the area. The rental apartment can also make an important difference. The city of Dieppe tell us it will not negatively affect our ward, our neighborhood. The question of development is an impact on the global market of some owners, depending on where a property is located. As to the apartment, the value of the apartment can be affected. Can the city of Dieppe assure us that the value of our property will not be affected by that development? And the sale of property can also slow down because of global change in the character of a community. Did the city look at the traffic, the installation of additional parking, the noise, the loss of green space, the change of public lighting, the increase of the number of commercial and maintenance trucks, as well as the loss of intimacy of a space green and forest zone. Green so it is important for the people as municipal requirement. We understand that when the community was developed, the department had designated some parcel 6 meters going from Dieppe Boulevard and ending in the green at the corner of Nathaniel Gillen Street. A parcel of land was indicated by Pickett. Let's understand that this part of land belongs to the new owner, period. This was part of the donation given by Calma to the city for green space at the time. What happened to it? And what did the city obtain in return? What did the promoter give for green space? As far as green space for the present developer, what is the promoter planning for what he's building for the project? A BERN was built at the time behind a series of house in the low area of the street. Second burn was built on the zone formed triangle at corner of Gillen and Nathalie. What can we see that these burn had an important object goal at the time? That applies still applies today. The inferior part of the burn was a good defense against future building and parking. The forest zone is also an important component for our community. The zone between the golf course and Natalie is a good example of it. Similarly, natural forest behind the house of Gillen and Natalie is a precious characteristic. The trees along the Dieppe Boulevard is another good example of the necessity of a good planning. Concern of the citizen as original owner, many of us cooperated with Karma Development to define a conceptual vision of that community and the kind of houses that was preferred and acceptable. That is to say, the houses and condo of low density condo. We knew and we are still aware that this indicated the eventual building of some building along the boulevard, the boulevard. The development of land was at the dead end, but the owner has changed since then. Even though we favor the development of that piece of land, we cannot offer our support for the time being, at least not as long as our concerns have not been dealt with. Density of population affecting our community, traffic-wise, less tranquility, less sun, less green space, and so on and so forth. Total population of our community could increase by 600 to 700% approximately. Do we have any density, population density study available as a reference? The possible incoherence between the houses, existing houses, and uh, huge high building will cause some problems immediately on our left when we entered the Nathalie Street from the Boulevard. Did the city look at the impact that this could have on the existing property? Even though we understand that the planner is only recommending 5 stories on Guylaine, we're concerned by the height of that building. The building will be directly south of the residences on Nathalie. The owner is at a higher level of the houses on Nathalie. Along the level of the building, this could have an impact to be at an equivalent height of 5 stories, according to the level where our houses are. Could have a direct impact on the lighting of the sun, especially during winter months when the sun is at the lower part. Did the city look at the impact of the laws of natural lighting on the existing property? Some property will use their access to the sunset that we've had for 12 years. And then will the burn be affected? Will the developer suppress some of them? How will the outside parking be affected? If they are too high, they will lose the advantage of the burn. The car that run at night with their light shining directly in our house. Even though we've seen the site, we have not seen where the site and the parking will be located. How many feet from our boundary will the trees be affected? Already the promoter has removed some trees planted 12 or 13 years ago next to the burn on Natalie Street. Finally, many citizens are worried. You can imagine the people on the higher stories who look in our backyard and on our patio. Would the promoter plan to add some trees in some zones and to improve the burn if need be. Conclusion. Even though it's not a preferred vision for the development of a property question, we recognize that the promoter has the right to build multiple five-story apartment with as the city and the promoter a meeting where we could discuss the concern that we have expressed. As we mentioned previously, we are not opposed to simply look to have assurances that would reduce our concern. Andrew Borgen, Ronald Cormier, Paul Landry, Roger Legier, Jacques Robichaud. There's a list of people. Clary, Monique Serge Langis, Isabelle Walker, Roland Sharon McNeil, Anne Leblanc, Jean Guivino, Horace Luc Lévesque, Karine Robichaud, Florence Cormier, Ernie Ginette Bergevin, Pan Etienne Sears, Gaëtan Vautour, Danny Leblanc. And there are addendum added to this letter. On behalf of the citizens of Fox Creek Gulf, we would appreciate to receive a copy of the following documentation. 1, the planned original subdivision approved. Any plan of approved for our community since. Any conceptual plan for our community that is available for the original zoning plan in our community. 5, any zoning plan approved for our community since. 6, all amendments that are being proposed to the existing plan again. This was requested on January 29th.
The following letter is the following. My name is Matthew Dagg, and I reside at 59 Camille Dieppe. This past week, I received a letter in the mail advising me of an application to make an apartment building taller. Lots being referred being NID 704-39153, 704-58971, 704-58963, 704-58906, and 704-58914. The height of extension displeases me and just about every other resident in the neighborhood. Big reason residents choose to purchase and live in this part of Dieppe is that it is residential with single household dwellings for the greater part. If we wish to live amongst taller buildings, we would have bought Moncton or downtown Dieppe. The lot 704-29153 was already slated for commercial apartment dwelling. This is not bad as the building finds itself situated at a much lower altitude where its original proposed height of 5-story building would not affect the skyline of a residence. Expanding it to 6 will start to intrude on the neighboring residents. Privacy will be affected where high rise will have views on people's backyards. The apartment will add a significant amount of population in our area not prepared for it. Green spaces do not seem to be in motion to accommodate the influx of tenants, which means influx in animals can be assumed. Where their plans are to eventually add 450 units from what I was advised, this increase will also mean increase in dog walkers in the neighborhood. The problem I foresee is that more people will be living behind their dogs' businesses. This increase in dog poop can be noticed along Dieppe Boulevard, especially in springtime. The plan for the remaining lot was originally slated to be more condos, such as the ones on Nathalie and Guylaine, all the way down to Dieppe Boulevard. If the city is looking to have skyscraper-type dwellings, there are some much better suited land to complete this, such as all around Ruffin Street, where there is ample room and not located in a bedroom community. When speaking with some of our neighbors, I asked if the residents of Bliss, Noyles, and Richard Street received such notice as some neighbors were not aware of the letter having been sent out. Some residents are being left out of something that affects them in their neighborhood. Thank you for taking the time in hearing my concerns regarding these new developments. Please confirm receipt of this letter, Mathieu Dag. I have to mention also that we have the same letter from the same address, but underlined from Émilie Comeau-Verville. So we acknowledge that we have received this letter twice from two different individuals.
Lettre suivante, courriel de Sylvie.
Following letter and email, Sylvie Alain, addressed to the clerk to whom it may concern, a citizen of the city of Dieppe and a resident of the ward, to where this proposed changes the different need. I wanted to tell you my disagreement to authorize multi-family 6-story building in our neighborhood. Disappointed that the city of Dieppe want to have 5 meters. I remind you, we are zoned residential. Even though I'm not opposed to such development, I believe that these complexes should be built in downtown or in area zone commercial. Presently, we have the feeling of a residential ward where it's good to live, with a view on the nature and where we feel private in our yard. With this, we will lose all of this. It will have negative impact on our quality of life. The building of such height do not have a place in our neighborhood, while there are other places for complex of that height will have no negative impact with the citizens. Furthermore, since the designated lot for these multi-residential are higher than the boulevard by authorizing building of 6 floors visually, these last will seem to have 7, 8, or 9 stories where we will lose our private quality of life. I don't think that too many people will want to live around these buildings without mentioning the traffic. By looking at the multifamily complex built in downtown on Champlain and on Govan Street as an example, we see no story building, and many of these complexes are new buildings. When we purchased our house in 2017, we wanted a house in the city and a ward seen as a small community where it's good to live, where people walk on the sidewalk, children play in the yard. We would have, otherwise we would have, if we had wanted to buy a house where our quality of life would be affected, what will happen? And this is what's going to happen if you authorize the building of such a family complex in our neighborhood. I want to remind you that in the initial plan, it was question of building townhouse residences or condo, and not an apartment block, and not a 6-story building. For the well-being of the citizen of this neighborhood, please reconsider so that we continue to have a good quality of life in a ward that will remain residential. Alain.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the above noted amendment bylaw 96-48-36. In addition to my comments and concern provided in a group report being presented short and were already presented by our colleagues Jacques Robichaud, I have the following additional comments and concerns. 1, I do not agree with the proposed amendment to the bylaw 96-48-36, as it would apply to a 5-story building now under construction at the entrance to Nathalie Street in Dieppe. 2, this building will likely be a precursor to possibly adding a 6-story to 4 other similar buildings proposed by the developer for the Fox Creek Golf Community. Total units for these 5 buildings are rumored to total 450 apartments. If we estimate another possible 80 units for the large parcel of land immediately to the left of the entrance to Nathalie Street, a total of 530 high-rise residential units could eventually be built in our community. This would represent an over 650% increase over the existing 80 or so low-rise townhouses. Three, such a disproportionate number of high-density and high-rise residential apartment building to our existing townhouse community would likely have many negative impact in our community. High people density levels, more people and vehicle traffic, property values, noise pollution, reduced green space, and forested land, to say the least. Four, I understand that the city of Dieppe may have under consideration a change in bylaw that would allow for 6-story residential buildings along the Dieppe Boulevard with a condition that they be built within 100 meters distance from the boulevard. This would appear acceptable, especially when introduced on undeveloped land as compared to an existing low-density subdivision such as our community. Five, lack of transparency in consultation from the city of Dieppe and the developer with residents up to received by residents recently of the notice of public hearing for amendment to bylaw 96-48-36. Earlier and more adequate information would have provided more adequate feedback. This has changed noticeably in the last week or two with the city's planning and development department officials leading to assistance, and is appreciated. Questionable planning regarding the proposed development from PID 704-58963, and more specifically, the proposal to build a high-rise building sort of in the middle of an existing low-rise residential subdivision. This appears to be contrary to what the city may considering for allowing 6-story residential building along the Dieppe Boulevard with a 100-meter corridor. A Google photo below helps to illustrate this. 7, green space and forest land. With all of the possible development of the 5 land parcel in questions over time, residents will want to know earlier than later what is being planned. Hopefully, initial landscaping plans will be shared with residents at an early stage of the process. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts at the public hearing. Paul Landry.
Oui, courriel de Normand Arsenault.
Went from Norman Arsenault, Westmoreland Condominium Corporation of Natalie Street want to show their disagreement to the amendment proposed to amend the height prescribed 7 meters building that are proposed in that sector presently. Our community of Fox Street is mainly composed of town unit, which meets the original conditions and which have been attractive by the buyer. The addition of 1 and maybe 5 building, as proposed, will be a prejudice for the citizen of that ward. And our quality of life would be disturbed by the increase of such a concentration of citizens in front of such a small piece of land. The residents of Gila and Nathalie are proud of their investment. The city of Dieppe must work for and with these citizens to assure the continuation of such a ward. The city is expanding and such ward have to be protected. We encourage the developer to continue to make this beautiful ward grow by respecting the original plan and by respecting the citizens who think there exists a lot of property that are approved for such building or apartment, and they're waiting someone with a lot of respect. Normal, so no.
We would like to express objections to the proposed amendment to the bylaw 96-48-36 for the Foxland Golf Community Project for the reasons listed below. These changes are significant as they cover a large area, and the increase in height from 56 feet to 71 feet is considerable. We have substantial interest in this decision as it is not merely an inconvenience, but we greatly affect our quality of life and our property investment. 1, substantial detriment to the public good. Our neighborhood has already undergone significant development and for some time has been sought after by both individuals and families seeking residential property. However, the magnitude of the changes proposed will further impact the population density dramatically within the area. It is not in the public interest to proceed with the proposed amendment. Vehicle traffic. Vehicle traffic is already an issue in our neighborhood, especially during the morning and evening rush hours. It is very difficult turning into the right lane traffic and nearly impossible to turn into the opposing lane during these times. The proposed changes will significantly increase population density and cause further traffic problems. Safety will become an issue. Pedestrian safety. The many retirees that have chosen to live in the neighboring townhouses, as well as the seniors from Auberge du Soleil, benefit from the beautiful pedestrian walkways in our neighborhood. With the new school in the area, foot traffic from children going to school has also increased significantly. The surge in vehicle traffic caused by this rezoning, if permitted, is a serious safety concern for our elderly, grade school students, as well as other pedestrians. Quality of life for the public. The charm of our residential community has been its character. Multifamily housing should be kept relatively small so that it preserves the existing small community character. Building size variation within a neighborhood should be gradually for aesthetic and functional purposes. Tall buildings should not tower over smaller residential properties. This proposed increase in population density will become a nuisance, such as cause a lack of privacy, more noise, more light pollution. 2, detriment to our quality of life and property value. As stated previously, our neighborhood has been sought after by both individuals and families seeking residential property. With the addition of 70-foot-tall buildings towering over our properties, privacy, noise, light pollution will become problems for many homes in the neighborhood, including ours. We are very concerned with the quality of life to the enjoyment of our homes and our yards, as well as the devaluation of our property. A 10 to 20% decline in the value of property will cause substantial financial damage for our family. In our specific case, change to PID 704-58914 will be very detrimental to us. 3, lack of communication and neighborhood engagement in the planning. We are very concerned with the lack of communication from the City of Dieppe and the developer. We aren't aware of any meetings held to gather feedback from our community other than a letter from us to express objections to be read at the public hearing. We need to engage in dialogue and feel that you are considering our concerns. With Zone 1 under the red phase of the pandemic measures, we can't even meet with our neighbors to ensure that they are aware of this amendment and discuss our concerns and actions. We are enthusiastic supporters of smart planned urban development. We realize that urban growth is inevitable, but it must be cleverly planned and communicated with its citizens. That said, we aren't aware of any urban planning. For instance, shouldn't there be a gradual increase in building heights to avoid tall buildings towering over people's smaller properties? Have scale and proportion of the area been considered? Are buffer areas considered or planned? Urban design matters. In the letters received from the City of Dieppe, no reasonable justification for the variance has been offered. Within the current bylaws, lots in the area have had the ability to sell and buildings be constructed. The zoning amendment will benefit the owner of these properties and the City of Dieppe, but to the detriment of many current homeowners and general public. Regards, Denise Alain Martin. Marc Martin.
Courriel de Roland Leblanc au bureau du greffier. Bonjour.
Roland LeBlanc, hello. I want to give my objections to the amendment in this change will destroy the quality of life that has existed for many years. I was expecting that eventually to see apartment blocks on the boulevard. It was a surprise to see the possibility of a block on Gillen Street. If the council decides to authorize the amendment, I ask that all the aspects of the zoning be studied and that the residents of the neighborhood be consulted to study the final apartment block of 6 stories are authorized by the council. I suggest that they be built on the Dieppe Boulevard and that the lot in Gillen be developed in a similar way as the other property on Natalie and Gillen, either townhouse or condo with 1 and 2 stories. And we could add other conditions that would describe the material for the construction, the development of the building around the block, and fences around the property. It is hard to comment on the plan of the developer at the time being, since we have not received the detail of his plans. And since we are in red phase of COVID-19, we cannot consult with the neighbors. I thank you to consider this, and I can't wait to see the result of the discussion. Have a good day, Honorable Blanc.
Dieppe, New Brunswick, and we do not support the proposal to amend the bylaw 96-48-36. We are not in support of the plan indicating 5 parcels of land to be developed with multi-unit apartment buildings, as it is not consistent with the existing low-density housing in our community and contrary to what we had been led to believe when we purchased our property. The development of the 5 parcels of land to multi-unit apartment buildings will not only impact our home values, it will also impact the population densities, affecting our community in the form of high vehicle and people traffic, less tranquility, diminished sunshine, less green space. Total population of our community could possibly increase by 600 to 700% in 10 years. We have many concerns with so many large multi-unit buildings being built in such a small area that will surely impact our homes and our community. We feel there are many questions that need to be addressed. As the city looked into the impact of heightening traffic, additional parking facilities, noise, loss of green space, changes in the street lighting, increase in commercial and maintenance vehicle, as well as some degree of loss of privacy. Can the city of Dieppe reassure us that this will not affect our neighborhood negatively and assure us that the value of our properties will not be affected by this development? Lynn Miller and David Miller. I object to the proposed increase of the existing maximum authorized height of the Fox Creek Community Building from 7 to 25.5 meters. This proposed increase in maximum height would increase the population density of residential units in the proposed new buildings by 20%. Considering that there are 5 newly proposed buildings, this would effectively equal 1 additional new building, overloading the area with an unthinkable number of new residents. Currently, the Fox Creek community is an area of 80+ residential townhouse populated mostly with retirees able to enjoy their retirement years in a quiet, semi-rural environment. The current environment would be changed dramatically with order of magnitude increases in noise and light pollution and traffic congestion. The quality of life for existing residents will be sadly diminished. These are realities totally at odds with the original conception of the Fox Creek community. Current residents choose to live in this area of Dieppe based on the existing bylaw. Current homeowners' investments based on the then existing bylaw would be impaired, impacting current property values and threatening the economic well-being of these residents. Dieppe has stated values that it aims to be a modern, environmentally aware city with true concerns for the health and welfare of its citizens. Changing the existing bylaw is not compatible with those values. The requested by law change is noting more than a move for the optimization of development profit. Wayne and Janet Clowry. And the last one, to whom it may concern. I'm writing this letter to voice my displeasure at the planned development of the high-rise condos off Dieppe Boulevard, bylaw 96-48-36, number 162-98805. As a prideful citizen of the town of Dieppe, I'm eager for the continued growth and expansion of our beautiful community. However, the elevated placement and intended height of these apartments distract and intrude in the neighborhood, voiding privacy and obstructing views. As a homeowner of the area, it angers me. With all the vacant land to expand and grow the community with apartment-style condos, the town of Dieppe chooses an area that was intended for townhouses and single-home dwellings. An area that's already established with lots of children and growing families. Furthermore, increasing the height of these condos, breaking the plane of vision against city bylaws. These height-rise buildings will tarnish and tear the fabric of our neighborhood, ruining the family atmosphere we all come to value here in our corner of Dieppe. It angers me that with all the availability land to develop in Dieppe, you plan on putting tall, obstructive buildings in the middle of the family subdivision. Please review your decision for the extra height in the condo development. Concerned citizen, Richard Stendiesen. Mr. Mayor, these are the letters of comments and objection.
OK, merci. Est-ce qu'on a aussi reçu des...
Thank you. Did we receive any request of oral presentation? Yes, we have Mr. Jacques Robichaud who asked to speak. So, if Mr.
Oui,
Robichaud wants
m'entendez-vous?
to speak, can you hear me? Yes.
Oui, c'est
That's the
ça.
same who sent
Jacques
a letter.
Robichaud, je suis résident
Jacques
du
Robichaud,
69 rue
I'm a resident
Nathalie.
of 69
Moi,
Nathalie
je suis
Street.
une des personnes
I
que ça
am
fait
one
plus que 15
of the
ans qui
person
habite
who
dans le
has
quartier.
lived for more than
Et
15
honnêtement,
years
avec
in
ça
the
que je sais
neighborhood. And
aujourd'hui, si
frankly,
j'aurais à
with what
prendre une
I know
décision
today, if I had
aujourd'hui,
to
je pense que
decide
je
today,
reviendrais dans le quartier
I'm not sure
avec
that I
les
would
appartements qui
go
vont
back
être mis là.
in
J'aurais
the
préparé autre
neighborhood.
chose, mais je vais, dans
I
le but de ne
prepare
pas se
something else,
répéter, je vais
but
juste
in
mentionner
order not to
quelques
repeat, I just want to
points.
mention a
C'est
few
que la semaine dernière,
points.
on s'est fait dire
Last
par
week,
André
we
Frenette
were
que
told by André Frenette
le service de planification
from
allait
the
recommander
planning
au
the
conseil
PAC would recommend
d'accepter
to
la
accept
demande pour aller
the
à
application
21,5
to
mètres
go
pour
to
les édifices le long
21.5
du boulevard Dieppe,
meters
puis
for the
de
building
garder
along
à 17 mètres
the
celui
Dieppe
sur la
and
Vilaine.
keep
En
17
passant,
the one
celui sur la
on
Vilaine, là, c'est en plein dans
Ville.
le cours de
The one on
Nevers.
Ville is in our backyard, by
Il y
the way.
a eu
There was,
avant de venir à ça, je veux juste dire que je
I
me
just
pose la
wanted to say,
question à savoir
I'm asking
si
myself
M. Frenette
if
puis le secrétaire de
Mr. Frenette
planification, après
and
avoir
the Planning
entendu les
Advisory
objections
Committee,
des
after
résidents du quartier,
hearing
c'est qu'ils sont
the
encore prêts à faire
objection,
cette
if
même
they're still
recommandation-là,
willing to make
d'aller
that
au 6
same
étages au lieu de
recommendation to
rester à
go
5.
to 6
J'espère que
stories.
non, parce
I
que
hope
comme tu
not,
vois, nous autres, ça nous
because as
impacte
you see,
directement.
that has a direct
Dans le
impact on
cas
us.
j'étais
And
content de voir au
I
début de la
was happy
présentation
to
de la part
see
de
at the
M. Girard,
beginning
je pense, qui a
of the
présenté
presentation from
l'étude
Mr. Girard,
d'ombrage, mais l'étude
presented
d'ombrage, c'était pas un des édifices. J'aurais aimé voir ça
the
pour les
effect,
autres
the
édifices,
study
en
that
particulier
was
celui-là
done
qui
for the
est
shadow,
prévu pour la rue Guylaine.
but it's the one that is
Celui que
planned for
ça que vous avez
Guylaine.
montré,
The one that you have shown
du premier bloc qui est déjà
of
en
the first
construction,
block that
pour
is
lequel on n'a eu
already being
absolument rien à
built
dire.
on a
On
piece of
voit
land that I'm
déjà,
not
moi,
going
cet
to say.
ombrage-là va
We
m'affecter.
see
D'après ça que
that
je vois
will
sur
affect
l'étude
me
d'ombrage.
from what I
Ça va
see
m'affecter ma
in
maison
the shadow.
directement.
That shadow will affect my house
Pas tout le temps,
directly.
mais il y a de
Part
l'ombrage
of
qui
the
s'est
year,
versé
not all the
sur la
time,
maison.
but some
Ça prend
shadow
nos coups de
has a
soleil.
shade on my house
Donc,
and it will
j'aimerais
affect
ça
us.
que je lis voir
So
les
I
autres.
would like to see the others.
Pour ce qui est
Now,
du
as
développeur, je
for
comprends
the
qu'ils veulent
developer,
développer, je
I
comprends qu'ils
understand
veulent
they want to
construire.
develop.
Pour eux
I know
autres,
that
c'est de
they
l'argent
want
de
to build.
plus.
For
Pour la
them,
ville de
it's more
Dieppe,
money.
tout
For the city of
développement
Dieppe, Any
être bon.
development can be
Puis ça veut
good.
dire aussi
And it means
augmenter la
also
densité.
to
Ça veut
increase
dire
the
augmenter
density.
de
It
l'argent dans
means
les
to
coffres avec
increase the
plus
money in
d'impôts
the
fonciers,
coffer
etc.
with
Pour
more
nous autres, c'est notre
tax,
chez
property
nous.
tax
Nous
for
autres,
us. It's our home.
on comprend qu'il
We
y a d'autres besoins, mais
understand
nous autres,
that there
on
are
vit
other
ici. On veut
needs,
avoir
but we
ça
live
qui est
here.
mieux.
We want to have what
Quand que
is
j'entends nous
best.
dire, j'ai déjà entendu aussi
When I
depuis qu'on a
hear,
commencé à parler de ça,
since we
qu'il n'y aurait
started
pas de
talking
grand
about this,
impact pour nous
that
autres comme
it
résidents.
wouldn't
Je suis pas
have
du tout
much
d'accord avec
impact
ça.
for us.
On
I
va
don't
finir par
agree
avoir
with
un
that.
impact chez nous.
There will be impact on
Juste
us.
pour terminer,
And just to
on espère que nos élus
conclude, we
sont
hope that
respectueux
our elected
envers les
people will
résidents
be
qu'on est là
respectful
depuis des années,
of the
qu'on paye les
residents
taxes
who have been
foncières
there for
depuis des
years,
années,
and we
puis
pay
qu'on aura
taxes
encore
for
la
many years,
chance d'en
and we will
discuter
still
avant
have
que
the
les
chance to
décisions
discuss
prises. Mais ce
before a
soir, c'est la
decision
première
is
fois
made.
que j'ai vu
Tonight's the
qu'on
first
pouvait
time
prendre la décision au
that
mois
I
de
have
mars.
seen that a
Donc, on
decision
parlera
would be made in
en
March.
espérant qu'on ait la
So
chance
I hope we'll have an
de
opportunity
rencontrer peut-être avec le
to
développeur,
meet
avec la
with the
ville,
developer, with
pour
the city,
en savoir plus, puis voir
to
s'il n'y a
know
pas
more
d'autres
and to
alternatives à
see
ça
if
qui nous
there's
été
not other
présenté.
alternatives
Merci pour cette
than what was
opportunité, puis
presented.
s'il y a
Thank
quelqu'un qui a
you
des
for this
commentaires ou des
opportunity.
questions,
And if you have any question or comment, please feel free. Is there someone else who intended to make an oral presentation, either the developer or another citizen? There were not any other from the citizen, but the developer is present. I don't know if he wants to add something. If he so wish, he can do so. David Savoy. Hello, thank you. I had a few comments. It's a process that we are following from what we were guided by the city. We will follow the process. I've noted the comments of the 12 letters and the gentleman who just spoke. We've taken that into consideration. It's interesting to see that it presents challenges. We are proud to be able to help the development of Dieppe, and I will follow the instruction from Mr. Alexandre and their process.
Merci.
Thank you.
Alors, comme ça a déjà été mentionné.
As it was mentioned previously, Monsieur Girard, did you want to add something? But essentially, I think that the next step you will tell us, if I may, Your Worship, here to clarify the process. Today, the council has received the comments, the objections from the citizens of our role as staff, the planning and development. We will study all the comments and try to clarify in the decision making and see if the council wish to proceed with the application, to proceed with conditions, or we can look at conditions of landscaping, architectural, how to integrate a bigger building inside an existing area. Will proceed the information in an objective way to have all the concerns of the citizens in consideration. On March the 8th, as I mentioned, the council will receive this analysis of the objections, the recommendation of the planning advisory committee, and they will be able to make a decision on March the 8th. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all those who presented comments, all the comments that were received. Thank you to our manager and his associate for the reading. And that's it. We will wait for the report that will be sent by the staff, and some decisions will have to be made. And I hope that there will be some work that will be done between the developer, the citizens, and the city of Dieppe. We recognize the challenges We also recognize the legal aspect and what it means also. As far as the zoning is concerned, there is a document on which everyone wants to be able to trust that document. It's a legal document. Essentially, they tell us what we can do and what we cannot do. And with all the side that are added, we'll see where it takes us between now and March. Thank you. We will now proceed to the next. I think our interpreter need 5 minutes to take a drink of water and maybe take the time for natural need. Let's take a small 5-minute break. We'll be back.
Alors, bonsoir tout le monde. On est
Good evening, everyone. We're back. I hope that our interpreter is back. We've said that he is, yes. Okay, let's continue. Now, once again, concerning the item 7.3, the proposed amendment to Z10 bylaw, I will go through the process for the public hearing once again. So, the same thing as item 1, it will be as follows. Number 1, the Planning Advisory Committee will make a presentation, and then we'll proceed to the reading of the letters. If you think that the last one was long, please get ready. And we'll go through the reading of the comments received. The city has offered to each one of them to address personally the council tonight. Afterwards, item 4, we'll hear the promoter and the person who asks permission to orally to speak to the council. The time of intervention would be limited to 4 minutes per person. First of all, you have to identify yourself, and if your question or your intervention was already dealt with, we ask you please not to repeat the same thing. Otherwise, it will be held against your time of 4 minutes. The total time is fixed to about 45 minutes. It could probably go longer for the public hearing. And Monday, as everyone knows, Monday, February the 22nd, 2021, the Planning Advisory Committee will give the analysis of the comments to the council members, and as the case of Margier, it would be possible for the members of council, for the councillors, be possible for the councillors to proceed to the first two readings, the first and second reading of the zoning bylaw 10, and express their comments at that time. So there, okay? So Monsieur Girard, who will speak on behalf of the planning and development sector, Mr. Girard. Good night, good evening again, and thank you again. I will share my screen, if I may. So,
Donc, vous voyez mon écran?
you see my screen? Yes.
OK. Donc, on est présentement en audience.
So we're presently in public hearing
Les amendements proposés
for the proposed amendment
à l'arrêté zonage.
to bylaw
Donc,
Z-10 2021. We propose a new bylaw that will be called bylaw Z10 2021. So we'll go through the deadline for the process to bring you back on the critical dates for the process, and to just briefly to talk about the initiative of public participation and to go into more details, the main changes that will be proposed to the proposed bylaw. So you have in front of you the deadline that includes the important dates for the amendment process. On January the 11th, the council fixed a date, a public hearing, and for public hearing was done with the municipal, and public hearing is for tonight to discuss and present the changes to the proposed on January the 14th. We place a notice on our website on January 25th. We propose the changes that were proposed to the municipal plan on February the 8th tonight. And on the 22nd of February, we bring the file for recommendation to the PAC. On February the 18th, it's a date that deal with the municipal plan. It's a date that is prescribed by the Planning Act. When we propose a change to the municipal plan, we have 30 days to send any opposition. 30 days is February the 18th to 30 days after the presentation that was held on the 25th. On February the 22nd, we'll receive some comments and amendment there again in relation with what will be proposed today and in relation with the request from Councillor Boutier to give an additional 2 weeks to the citizens and the interested party and the developer to send letters and comments and proposal to the council. And also we can, as it was mentioned, we can look at all the comments that will be received for February. There will be another presentation that we'll make to the council. And on March the 8th, the council can decide to proceed with the letters. There again, no decisions have been made. We present the information today. So, changes and the zoning is available on our website and also on the Facebook page. Talk about the change. We want to get the opinion of the different people from the municipality, the residents, and also the people who are responsible for the changes and for the municipal plan, and those who want to inform themselves. Everything is available on our website. So we've sent several notices to the owners, the targeted when we propose a rezoning. Even this process of new zoning bylaw, we've sent almost 200 notice to different owners. Some notice were sent to the developer, but an email that was sent to the developer by Expansion Dieppe to tell them about the process and to be told to communicate with us to become familiar with the changes. So the change guide were posted on the website. The changes were posted on the Facebook page. It's a survey dealing with questions that are targeted for the people who are interested in participating in the process and to see how they can share their opinion as residents, as citizens in this process. So it simply bring you back and put you in context as to the meeting of September the 21st, when we made a presentation on the development of the territory, the new trends, the development inside the municipality in the last 5 to 10 years. So we talked to you about the request of rezoning that changes more and more, and that we see more and more application for rezoning for row houses. That we see an increase in the kind of non-traditional non-traditional, where there's more than one building on the lot with private access. We also see the construction of single-family dwelling are decreasing as to the total number of buildings that are built in Dieppe. It's a trend that been going on for 10, 15 years. The single family dwelling have less and less total percentage of houses built in Dieppe. And new construction of houses of multifamily dwelling are on the rise. And it was the objective to talk to you about the development such as downtown and the Boulevard Dieppe, and there again to make a follow-up on the development of downtown that was done in the past. These are proposals that will come to support this proposal, and we see the more and more development inside downtown. So there again, these are proposals to better structure to make it such that it integrates itself and that it follows the planning document that were presented. And so the first change that I would like to mention is there again has to do with the development guide of downtown to leave an opportunity to have a slight increase in density on the property around the downtown. It would be to change the zoning of these parcel from R2 to zone residential urban RU. The objective here again is to leave a slight increase in density up to a maximum of 4 apartment per land parcel. Here is what I refer to on Normandy, Virginia, St. Therese, Cousteau, Albany. These are a piece of land at the present time. There's a lot of buildings that are already developed inside many houses. There's duplex, triplex that exist, but they are in a farm that integrates well in existing area. We can encourage that kind of development. We see that as an opportunity to increase the offer of affordable housing, and we see that as an opportunity to offer buildings that allow people to walk downtown, to walk to Champlain Place. So that's an area we see opportunities. There again, slight increase in density. And here we can see the what would be proposed as far as density is concerned. We could change a house in a duplex and or a 4-unit. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the question we've made several the increase of the demand of by promoters that want to develop non-traditional development is several buildings. The main building or apartment blocks on a given parcel of land. So we see that this opportunity should be removed from the zoning bylaw because we see two standards that were created inside the municipality where some developers will bring public street and they'll develop row houses on public street. They create lots. They'll give public utility land to the municipality and they will leave the piece of land to the municipality. Other developers are more towards creating public space when there's lots of space to develop a public street and to have a traditional subdivision. There again, it's a proposal that we present to the council And we know that there's certainly some reserve by some promoters, and we are interested in knowing their concern and to see if they would propose some solutions. And there would be two standards within the municipality for that kind of development. There again, just for an overview, when we talk about non-traditional development, we talk of offering an advantage to those who develop a residence on a land with private access, because the initial cost to develop a private access are less, but sometimes their development are less foreseeable in the future as to the management of the assets on a long-term basis, the question of infrastructure that are found on a private party, the garbage collection and the snow removal. These are all on private access, so it could create maybe a challenge in some places on the long term, as much for the residents who live there, but also that the resident again who can have problems with these development. So as I said, it's hard to foresee for the neighbors sometimes. No public. If we talk about maintaining on a long term water line can be on the public. Here we talk about collectivity breakup. This is an example here to have more than one building on a lot with private access. Once again, we see an opportunity of creating a public street, have it traditional. So this is what we want to encourage the developers to pursue with public street when there is certainly an opportunity to do so. So the number for the outside CM. So this is more to see once again, we see more and more requests of promoters that want to maximize that their piece of land as to put as many building as possible on their parcel of land. And it happens that the proposal that have the smallest frontage that goes along the private street, as it was mentioned in the January 25th presentation. The objective is when the promoter has the opportunity to have a long frontage on the public street, as it would be identified here. That's where we would like that it would become a reality rather than be a case where it's done case by case or maybe not done at all. So the objective to have a building that is more in line with the public street. We know that not all the piece of land can accommodate the frontage. There would be a possibility to have a variance on the zoning bylaw. There would be a proposal that is reasonable and that would meet the question of a building on the public street, and not to only not to have a building with very little entrance and would only have a small frontage. So this is only an example of a hypothetical development. We talk about small frontage. This essentially is what we refer to have a development. This is a hypothesis. We talk about developing 108 building with small frontage on the public street, except for this building here. And here again, we talk about with the parking cover 56% of the parcel of the land, and this is a two-story building. So we talk about building here again. we want to target, it's not we want to target individual, but this is an example when the small side of the face of the building, we can find ourselves with faces that are more interesting for the people who walk on the sidewalk or they go on the street. But there again, we see the opportunity of having a better animation with a frontage of the building that face the public street. Here is another example, again, of the same scenario. Here we would give the long frontage of the building, and we would also have several pieces of land, different buildings on one property, and with the increase of coefficient of the lot that is developed with buildings and parking. So we're up to 62%, and it must be noted that the side of the buildings that face the public street and the back face the public street, there again, it's simply to show what the back of a building of a certain land can look on a public street. Another scenario here again is to maximize the zoning bylaw to consider the configuration of a building and to play with the height of the building instead of developing two-story building. We can go to three-story and we could back up the buildings of the property line. And there again, we would increase the number of green space on the property. The objective would be to have face on public street. Each building would be on their own lot, and essentially it would be interesting phase of building. This could be an example of a building that face the public street. So here at the present time, RHN, a building, a multifamily dwelling of 12 units. It's a use that is allowed in the zone, but must be brought in front of the PAC, of the Planning Advisory Committee, and see if the committee wants to apply some conditions. We propose to eliminate that requirement, but because of the other division, what we are proposing with the zoning bylaw, if the developer can meet the standard, they would not have to go in front of the PAC, of the Planning Advisory Committee, to apply some conditions to the development. It could be done with them. So here, this is an approach we want to take in some sector of the municipality. So the development unit, the garage, the planning in the CC zone. So this is the importance of continuing to eliminate our frontage, our face. At the present time, we don't allow to have parking at the main level in our building. And this is a proposal that we'd like to put forward to let the promoter to put a minimum of 5 meters of residential use along the face that face the public street, and then behind that use we can do it with this proposal. And so it would be the same thing with the commercial. So where the commercial would be allowed, it would not, instead of having the whole main floor for a business, while it could devote a minimum of 5 meters along the whole face towards the public street, if they want to use the inside of the building on a that is faced with an inside parking, it would be allowed if it's adopted as a regulation. So it gives a high level of flexibility to the developer in some sector of the municipality where there may be some challenges with the configuration of the building to accommodate business on the whole main floor. Oh, here it would be to introduce a requirement as to how many face could be exposed over the ground for underground parking when we develop buildings in slope in a slope. Well, we can be at the level of the ground on one side, but then uh, inferior, lower on the other side. Well, we could consider to have a face and underground parking that would be exposed on top of the ground. I have an example here. Look, here is a building with with a it's leaning on one side. So we would be one side that was more animated, but we introduce business inside that slope, and we try to prevent something like this, just to have no animation. But here again, these are proposals that we are doing because we try to put some life in our public life and to make sure that no cement block are put in a slope on a hill. Well, we can look again at some specific case when try to find other solutions that could bring specific case with a variance. So conception on the CC zone, changes for all the building on CC are being proposed, and that projection of buildings such as the balcony and the veranda, and the outside wall that face the street, and also the width of the face of the building must be 75% of the water on the public street. It's a requirement also to make such that there's no big space between the building or emptiness. And in downtown, we want the building to take some importance on the site. And of course, there will be various process of variance if a proposal does not meet that requirement. Well, again, to bring a proposal that is reasonable, there is a mechanism to be followed for a variance of 75%. The objective is to make such that it be maximized, not for parking or driveway, to accept the back of the building. And here again, these are proposals that are in relationship with the plan downtown, the downtown plan. The downtown plan here is to try and bring some new architectural concept, to give more flexibility to the promoter. And it's suggested that the building, the downtown, it should incorporate or some of the following design, that the floor located over 13 meters in height must have a withdrawal of 6 feet, so that it should have some withdrawal, horizontal withdrawal at every 4 meters. I'll give an example of that. And here you see the two buildings that you see. There are withdrawal back horizontal after the main floor. This is to animate the building, is to introduce some architectural characters that are interesting, especially for buildings that are found in downtown Dieppe, and eventually will be used by several persons, that will create an interesting environment for the residents of Dieppe. And another example of building that is lively where there's a backdrop, the change of material. We can talk about the material that is being proposed. So the housing in the garage in this CS, I talk a little bit about it with the question of garage and parking that can be incorporated at the main floor with business on the main floor. So except for the business on Champlain, municipal is using all the floor except for Champlain Street. We would allow multifamily dwelling. This is a change that is quite substantial because it will allow the promoter or the owner that owns land on Couvert or L'Acadie to have more multifamily dwelling instead of having a business on the main floor, and will allow to have it on the second floor on Chablais Street. We see that Chablais Street should be maintained as a commercial street, so the same requirement. And it's been proposed that the width of a main building be measured at 60% of the front of the building in CS. It's a requirement since it's not downtown here. So the requirements are less, and the same thing, same clause for the garage, and to incorporate a minimum of 5 meters of the horizontal. There is a map that would show the proposed changes to allow the residential, the multifamily in zones that are zone CS. So here, this is a proposal to eliminate the two business inside the municipality. And here again is done in relationship with what we're doing in relation to the change, the requirements of architecture of a building on Dieppe Boulevard. We've talked with a promoter, and I think he's with us tonight. And he suggested to eliminate the commercial inside the municipality. And we saw that there was an opportunity to do that, but nevertheless to maintain a certain level, a certain standard level as far as the development, the design inside the land that go along the Dieppe Boulevard. This is only one example of the map of commercial that are in red along in black along the Evans Street. So here was again the amendment and the conception of building in the CM zone. It's in relation with the change that is proposing to commercial, and it's in order to introduce some standard of design on the Boulevard to make such that the Boulevard will become a boulevard that is interesting. You have architecture that can integrate high quality building on the Boulevard to maintain the vision that was established a long time ago in the municipal plan to make it a boulevard that is animated and interesting for the resident. It's also proposed to allow multifamily dwelling in a CM zone that would find south of Yvonne all the property that would be zoned CM, and they go along the Dieppe Boulevard. We would allow multifamily dwelling inside the zone. We see that north of Paul Street, we want to maintain some commercial zone. We see there's already a good commercial area. We want to hinder the to be able to accommodate commercial in the future. So here again, this is a proposal that we're putting to the council. We suggest to eliminate the use of multifamily dwelling inside institutional zone. So the trend, what we see is that some developers, some promoters purchase some property that were zoned institutional but allow multifamily dwelling inside that zone. So we believe at the end of the day, the intention of multi is to accommodate institutional and not necessarily to accommodate a use that is high density residential. And here again, it's a proposal that we're putting to the council. You will see that yes, it will have impact on some owner. We are aware. There again, the objective is not to target a piece of land among others, but to look at all the property that are zoned institutional. If the council is not at ease with that, they can certainly change it. They cannot proceed with this proposal, but we see nevertheless that it should be done essentially to give a certain visibility for the property that are neighboring on institutional. For specific material, here again, there is a tendency that we see more and more, a trend, is that for multifamily dwelling is to introduce some material that are metallic nature, and they have to be used for commercial building. And presently, the zoning bylaw allow metallic panel, but did not allow uh, some some horizontal panel or vertical metallic panel and some siding. So at the end of the day, a specific material, we see that the amount of things that are of material that are allowed inside this definition continue to expand. So we see that at the end of the day, the metallic material have their place, but not necessarily to cover 100% of a building. So this is where we wish to remove the specific material and to remove the metallic from the list of specific material, to leave the material such as brick, wood, uh, concrete, concrete block, the stone, the material that are perceived as more traditional material for a big building, and to leave the metallic iron on most of the building. And here, this refer again to face of building that face on the public street and not the other side. They don't have that do not face on the main street. Metallic material will be allowed on the side and in the back if they don't face the public street. This is only to indicate what we're saying, to propose to remove the mural material. Here again, when we talk about metallic material, it's not to target some specific building, but to tell the council that maybe put some material together, a more traditional, such as metallic, that could have been introduced on the kind of building. So it's important as long as it doesn't face the public street. But if we were to allow that on public street, it could have had a visual impact on the future building for that. This is to show, once again, the brick, how it can bring an architectural attraction on the building. So I will leave my colleague Francois to conclude part of the presentation. Francois will be able to go through the rest of the changes. François, the floor is yours.
Merci, Alexandre.
Thank you, Alexandre. Do you hear me? Yes,
Donc, je vais partager
I will share my screen.
Donc, est-ce que vous voyez mon écran?
Do you see my screen? Yes.
Donc, parmi les autres
Excuse
changements,
me. Among the other changes that the staff is proposing is the increase of cost for the request of variance, conditional use, temporary use, non-authorized, and comparable or compatible. The use for the continuation of a non-conform use and will go to expenditures of $300 would go to $400 and $50. That would correspond to the same cost or similar cost as the city of Moncton and the town of Riverview. Among the other changes that are proposed in 3.1 section is the exemption for a development license for signs of non-fixed price that are only allowed, announcement signs, sandwich signs as they are commonly known, or two sides of small size, and the banner signs, the signs in form of a sheet or bird feather. And also among the exemption for a playground, a small family animals for family animals, and we have mentioned a size before it was mentioned, but with no size being mentioned. So 2.5 square feet, 7 feet of floor size and building that would be 1.82 meters in height. The support that have a height less than 1 meter 39 inch is the over of the wall since the lower surface, the demolition or the removal of an accessory building. So these amendment, these change would be the considered 2.1 in accordance with the bylaw. Also, it is proposed that we will add some standards to limit the number of square footage that is possible on the same residential property for accessory building. We talk about detached garage. So immediately we have a percentage that limit the possible number of accessory building. So big size building that could allow the multiplication of many buildings. So it is proposed that we should install a maximum 140 square feet absolute on the same property that would equal to 506 square feet. It would be among the change that is being proposed for mobile garage and the tempo. In 2017, we proposed to adjust the distance of the front yard of from 1 meter to 3 meter, but we noticed that change. Several type of building, row houses, front yards that are limited distance-wise, they would not be able to put that kind of structure in place. So the staff recommend to come back to the former distance of 1 meter, and a mobile garage would be installed seasonal nature from October to April. And furthermore, the present bylaw does not stop the installation of a structure if it is installed in a backyard laterally to avoid that there be a multiplication of this type of building in residential zone. We propose to limit the number of mobile garage. One order would be a size of less than 900 square meters, and two on lot that would be higher, 900 square meters or more. There would be adjustment on 3.216 and 3.217 as example. As for the fences, so our advisory committee, the planning advisory committee, has received several requests or application over the last few years to allow a toll by the way around. The staff studied what is happening in different town or city, and it seems like it is something that is more and more popular and more tolerated. So we had a prohibition before for that kind of fence in the bylaw, but we are proposing to eliminate, to lift that prohibition. But as for the house that's more agricultural, or we want to regulate the size of to allow the kind of fence in RA or RN where the agricultural use are greater and better received. Also, we talk a little bit, I talk at the beginning, we are proposing to exempt certain kind of signs, and we didn't have many requests of that kind of signs, the sandwich signs and the banner signs. So we are proposing to remove the habit of coming to get a license for a permit for that kind of signs. It would be subjected to standard of the zoning bylaw. And same thing for someone who wanted to amend the content of it, an existing sign on a building or already existing. We just change the banner with the text. We would not require a permit, a development, and the staff would do the analysis and see that Z22 be met. So for the zone CC, the staff is proposing some changes, and so it is proposed that the signs placed on outside wall on CC downtown to have back lighting. And well, we see an example of that kind of signs, and something like this we would allow a new things to be installed, but we would allow businesses who want to install different things. They want to put the name of the building in big letters. So there are changes under section 3.7 and under the definition of zoning bylaw. We are also proposing the amendment of some elements for internal panel and wood sign in the RNA zone that go along Highway 15 and 2. We want to put some standard in line with what was allowed by the Department of Transportation along the highway. So among these changes, we would go from the maximum size would go from 250 square feet to 280 square feet. And also the distance from the limit of the property would be reduced from 1 meter, 39 inches to, instead of 7.5 meter, that is 24 and 7 outside the road. Well, we talk about the line where the right of way ends. And also that some standard would be proposed to have increased distance and should be maintained between each sign. So at the present time, we talk about 150 meters of distance between the signs, and the staff's proposing to increase it 250 meters would be in line with what the Department of Transportation is recommending for the non-incorporated community along the Trans-Canada Highway. Among the other changes that the staff is proposing is to limit or to eliminate the possibility of installing a new billboard sign in the environmental conservation zone. So along the Charlersville Marsh, this change is proposed to conserve the marsh, and it would be interesting. So the existing signs that exist along the Amero from Acadie would conserve a grandfather clause, an acquired right. So as for, we clarified certain things as to the home activities. So in the zone R2, R3, and RHM, it would be qualified that a small business at home could be exercised in a single family dwelling rather than a twin dwelling. It would be those two kind of building that would be they would allow this kind of occupation. It's proposed that handcraft can be established on property 4,000 of size when they're located in our zone. And furthermore, those should be placed at least 6 meters from an area 98 feet from a public land. We think there's more things that is needed for this kind of use, and there's concern, and there should be amendment in the neighborhood. So 5.7 of the bylaw. Among the other changes we're proposing is also the definition of agricultural use be amended to include the limit on the number of farm animals. So we talk about use that are in RA, Dover Street, for instance, Amiro, and part of Champlain. So we're proposing to limit the number of farm animals to 8 and poultry to 24. The staff estimate that the agricultural would be more intensified. So a change would be proposed in the definition under 2.1, definition 2.1. Among the other changes that we are proposing is to allow simply changes that are more intensive in RNN. So in the territory that we merged in 2015, and they're far away from urban land, and we feel that this would have less conflicts with urban region of the city. So once again, another change to the definition. So I will leave now my colleague Alexandre for the next slides.
François, il va falloir que tu me laisses partager mon écran.
François, you'll have to let me share my screen.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Donc, vous voyez mon écran.
You see my screen?
Donc, juste pour
So, just to complete the presentation, we'll the changes to the zoning map, the change that are proposed. The first change that is proposed would be for 3 pieces of land that go along the Boulevard Dieppe, along the Melanson Road. We're proposing a rezoning from R4 to CM. And there again, the objective is to have a more coherent zoning on Dieppe Boulevard, knowing that if the council adopt the other changes that they allow multifamily along the Dieppe Boulevard to these changes to Dieppe Boulevard, essentially there would be an opportunity for the promoters, except not to allow row houses along the Dieppe Boulevard. This is something we tell to put it in value, the Dieppe Boulevard as a boulevard that accept density, except the row houses. The other change that is proposed, and I've talked a little bit at the presentation, the beginning, is the zoning bylaw for around its city. It's 180 property that would be affected. One thing that I forgot to mention earlier is the changes. If the council accept the change, the building that will be developed along Acadie and Champlain Street, and they go along the property on Normandy, for instance, and Virginia in part, Coastal, the buildings that are developed on Acadie or Champlain would need to have a withdrawal. This brought an impact on these property that are more of a residential nature. The objective here is to favor and encourage the developers, the promoters, the owners on Champlain to maximize their property or concrete the development of downtown. And here again, I think it's important to take that into consideration. And there again, if the council so wish, there should be a certain withdrawal standard, they can do so. But at the present time, we're proposing to withdraw that. And what is interesting is I personally talked to 17 persons, and some objection letters were sent as to the proposed changes were sent to the council, one on Normandy, and I believe there was one on Cousteau and one on Denis. And here again, the objective of this zoning change is to allow a slight increase in density in the sectors that you see in front of you. And so the objection letters will be read after the presentation. Another change that is proposed here again, the reason for the proposed change is to have a zoning that is more coherent on Pascal on one side. On one side it's on R1 and the other side is one side is R2, the other side we're trying presently is R1, and we're trying to change it to R2 to have a more coherent between the two sides of Pascal. I've had discussion with some owners on Pascal, and there again, we did not get any objections on Pascal. I may be mistaken, but as much as I remember, as far as I remember, we did not get any objections. On Thomas, there again, the same thing. We try to have a more coherent zoning on the western side. Part of zoning is on R2, and on the eastern side it's R1, and there is a change of zoning. And beyond Elbow, where it's zone R2, the eastern side is R1 and the west is R2. So essentially, we're seeking to have the same zoning, Thomas, on R1 to R2. So there has been some objections as to that proposal. People have sent objection. They'll be read after the presentation. On Melanson, same thing. We want to have a more coherent zoning, the R1 to R2 for all of Melanson between Fox Street and Fred and Moulin should have the same zoning. That zoning proposal here is to address an existing proposal in favor. The council try to eliminate the multifamily to institutional. At the present time, the land that is in front of you has a multifamily that is pre-existing. So we're trying to have a change of zoning, zoning change, so that the building remain a use that is conform. We're not trying to create a non-conform, but that's a proposal that we're putting forward, that we're giving you. And this completes our proposal for today, our presentation. You have in front of you the important date for the process, and I will leave the floor to the clerk to go through the objection letter, or letter of objection. So, first email, Charles Poirier, Mr. Clerk, I communicate with you today as owner of the following line 0092 4738 405 4041 8868 4032 4447 0092 7001 3156 4028 4022 7060 and 7044 2819. It means I've had the opportunity to discuss this and a item with your staff earlier this year. I must also say that I agree with some changes that are proposed, but I have reserve as to others. I agree with the elimination of the corner of Melanson and Dieppe Boulevard. I agree that the obligation of building commercial space on the main floor will also be exempted. But is this item part of the change of zoning? But I don't agree that we not allow that a building on that is on multiple lower densities such as HM. There should not be anything stopping to put a campus of multiple building on a site. Would be acceptable that such a project would have a maximum size of the building. Reasoning is that the cost of having a public street cannot be supported by a weak volume. A small public street could be justified for 60 units, but cannot be justified for 312. Your appendix A-1-4 shows a zone, a water flow. I would propose that conservation CU be incorporated, and this would complete a link between the two parcels of the same land, east and west, and which are the green sides of high density. Also, your appendix A-1-2 show a multifamily dwelling to commercial. The question is as follows. Would that force a commercial zone to the project? If so, it's a change to follow. I don't agree that we change the zone at this time. And I would like to raise the issue that it's important that the owner of these properties should have a bigger influence on the architectural orientation. I agree that some material prescribed should be part and parcel of the project, but we have to be careful that the minimum would not make the project too costly to build. The same thing applies to the building on site. Have a more better defined to help the form and elevation. Paul Poirier.
sending this email to object to the proposed modification to the zoning map. Back in 1987, the residents of Thomas Street had signed a petition to discuss the zoning on Thomas Street due to the construction of duplexes. Upon a public hearing and the citizens having the concern for their property values heard by the city council and town planning, they agreed to rezone all lots with single-family dwellings, along with any vacant lots on Thomas Street to R1 and all lots with duplex R2. This motion was carried and passed in council chambers with the approval of town planning. Now your proposal of changing the zoning doesn't make any sense as most lots on the proposed map are already occupied by single-family dwellings. The rationale is too late when the street is already developed with the exception of maybe one or two lots. I don't understand this rezoning as it doesn't serve any immediate purpose. My objection to this rezoning plan is for our property value, the same as back as 1987. Bernard and Karen Leblanc.
Lettre de Jean-Paul Daigle, le bureau du greffier.
Jean-Paul Daigle, the office of clerk, 710-2021. I wish that Cousteau Street would remain R1 because I like the quietness of the street and the tax of my house. I'm not interested in having 3 or 2 units as a Jean-Paul Daigle.
Dear City Council officials, I'm concerned buffer zones of R2 zoned properties next to R1 properties will be removed or reduced without any consideration for the value of neighboring properties. Our property lies adjacent to 2 R1 zone properties. In the current bylaw, we have the right to a 10-meter green buffer between R2 property and those R1s to protect our home value and privacy. R2 designation does not promise any of these protections. For all 192 properties cases, though, this represents an imminent financial issue. Normandy Street is a unique case where there has been a lot of R1 development adjacent to R2 zone properties already. And thanks to the SNB property assessment tool, we can see that the exact change in R1 single dwellings property values over the last 5 years. On average, we can see that every year adjacent to an R1 on Normandy Street R2 property loses $1,280 in value, an additional of 0.87% considered to this at a time where home values are expected to increase 15%. Over a 25-year mortgage, this accounts for $32,000 in depreciation per individual. Given that there are 192 houses affected by this rezoning, this is potentially $245,760 annually in property devaluation suffered by Dieppe residents. Furthermore, most experts agree to even in the best cases, this number is further inflated for homes closer to the development. While it's understandable that the city and developers are trying to make economic growth happen in the area, it's undeniably doing so at the expense of its own residents. Given that this is an economically-driven decision, it is therefore my reasonable request that all impact addresses be compensated for the 25-year average mortgage term depreciated in value of their property of $32,000. This could be in the form of a lump sum payment, annual payment increasing with inflation, or annual property tax credit increasing with inflation in perpetuity applied to address as long as it remains an R2 or RU. Alternatively, it would be acceptable to simply maintain the current zone bylaws and ensure that all properties retain the 10-meter buffer between zones. In cases where a developer would need to waive a buffer to better utilize the space, then an agreement can be made between the affected property owners using the above figures as a recommended starting point. Admittedly, I personally have no problems with the idea of townhouse development and believe that this could be done tastefully in our neighborhood. My true objection is the financial burden we, Dieppe residents, are being burdened with in order to achieve this development, which is primarily benefiting private developers and not the Dieppe residents. Additionally, I take issue that this change is being made in the midst of a pandemic, which prevents residents from meeting to discuss this change and being made in the midst of a pandemic to discuss and an economic crisis, which leads residents to less resource to resist the change. Thank you, and I look forward to addressing these concerns. Please find source below and a summarized depreciation schedule attached. Sincerely, Alex Olmsted and Martin Leblanc.
Lettre de M. Denis Landry.
Denis Landry, letter. Mayor Yvon Lapierre, zoning bylaws 7/10/2021, Your Worship, Councillors, I would like to take this opportunity to give you my objection as to the changes proposed in the following article. Not allowing the building of more than one building on RHM and R3, 3.44, 1B and F. The add of standards for multifamily outside the zone CC and C1. 5.31B, multifamily dwelling 12 unit maximum in zone RHM. 8.1A, suppression of multifamily dwelling in zone institutional. I am presently developing a lot that when I purchased it at the time had and still have a designation to build multifamily dwelling. My project is to start in 2021, but I seem to be with a challenge even to realize it towards my zoning, the 8.1. The zoning was one of the reasons to choose to invest in it. I could be faced for not being approved for the building of family dwelling. In my situation, I don't find it would be fair to lose my investment in that designation as to prohibit more than one building on the same lot. I think that it directly affected the cost of initial building, since the cost of having a private yard versus public street to subdivide the land will reflect on the cost of renting. My project is looking to have affordable rent. With these overcost, it won't have the choice to affect the rent. My research has shown a lack in the city for affordable rent in new inventory. In conclusion, I believe that more time should be taken to reflect on the impact of these decisions and to have a meeting for the people that are affected by these decisions, and why not stop the project that are already underway, no matter if they have just started 95%. Having had this information, I would have finished my application and I would have avoided the impact on my development. I even paid for a zoning certificate last year, and I would like to build multifamily unit. Cordially, Denis Landry.
Written objections to proposed zoning bylaw Z10 2021. Dear Mr. Mayor and Councilors, let's start by stating the obvious. Doing business today in this current pandemic is difficult for everyone. Individuals, families, public in general, business owners, developers, and yes, city management staff and council. As business owners and developers, we find ourselves in a situation where we cannot meet face-to-face in groups to effectively conduct our normal business. So it begs the question, why the urgency of repealing the current Z10 2017 and replacing it by Z10 2021? This is an important piece of law that should be reviewed and discussed by all concerned, public, business owners, staff, and council. It should be open to debates, questions and answers, and explanations, all of which are better suited for a non-COVID world. The light is at the end of the tunnel. Why not delay this new bylaw by 1 year or even 6 months so that people can productively conduct group meetings? As per the Community Planning Act, this bylaw shall be reviewed no later than 10 years from its commencement or the last review. The current bylaw, Z10-2017, was enacted in September 2017, only less than 3.5 years ago. When changes were required to Z10-2017, amendments were proposed and adopted. The amendments to date are Z10-2017-1 in March 2017 to Z10-2017-12 in October 13, 2020. It is hard to understand in this context of a pandemic that the proposed changes are so urgent and critical to the well-being of the city that Z10-2017 needs to be repealed immediately. If the city sees otherwise and ultimately decides that some changes are required immediately for the well-being of the city, we suggest that can be dealt with by amendment instead of repealing the current bylaw at this time. As stated earlier in this letter, we strongly urge City Council to vote to delay the repealing of zoning bylaw Z10-2017 and the adoption of zoning bylaw Z10-2021 until everyone can safely hold group meetings. Some meetings could include only concerned and affected developers, and other meetings could include developers and the city staff. Another major concern in the fact that the city staff seems to be taking these proposed changes as law. The following is an example of this. Crandall Engineer on our behalf is currently dealing with the Planning and Development Department for approval for several multi-unit dwellings in our property. Although we are invited to voice our objections on the proposed changes, including the Z10-2021, staff is interpreting these proposed changes as already approved. In effect, it's not hard to feel that this exercise submitting our objections is a waste of our time and money, as it seems it is already a done deal. See Appendix A. We nonetheless hereby object to the following proposed changes. Proposed changes: elimination of the possibility of permitting more than one main building on a single lot in RHM and R2 zones. It's all the same information. I'm going to go through fast, but it's just the name of the changes that is proposed. So it's already been presented by Alexandre Giard. And we recommend on the following proposed changes, specific material. So they are suggesting changes to this article. And they are also proposing changes to eliminate commercial in CM zone location of dwellings on units, interior parking garage. In general, thank you in advance for your attention in this matter. Guy Bouchard, President, Immeuble Perfection Realtor, and Louis Landry, Vice President, Immeuble Perfection Realty.
Marc, je pense qu'on devrait lire les
I
impacts.
think we should read the impact.
En dessous de chacun des tableaux, là, il met
Under each chart, there's an explanation in what it will have an impact. Underneath,
one main building on a single lot in RHM and R3 zones. The impact: this change could possibly require the construction of public streets by the developer. And based on the proposed change below, these streets would be long. This street construction creates a severe initial cost impact for the developer and a long-term upkeep and maintenance commitment and cost for the city. A lose-lose proposition. Addition of standard to multiple unit dwelling outside of the CC and CM zones. The impact: the above proposed change could severely impact the number of units allowed to be built on a certain parcel of the land. This will impact the feasibility of certain potential proposed developments. Regarding the two above proposed changes, while the city proposed the use of existing infrastructure in maximizing density, The proposed changes will have the opposite effect. And to confuse matters, in April 2020, Council accepted to change a property from R1 to R3 and to allow the construction of a multi-unit apartment that does not have the largest dimension of a new multi-unit building. That is, its longest side shall be oriented towards the public street. Furthermore, both of these proposed changes seem to contradict policies set out in the current City of Dieppe Municipal Development Plan, MDP Z9 2017. In the section 5.0 under traditional versus non-traditional form of development, Policy 9, it shall be a policy of council to recognize in specific case when a traditional form of development cannot be achieved or when appropriate and desirable non-traditional or alternative form of development that may contain private access or more than one main building on a lot and shall be subject to specific development conditions in order to ensure a responsible and structured approach to development. Policy 10, Proposal 4, it is proposed that council development and maintain design guidelines and development standards to serve as a complement to the MDP in order to ensure safe, structured, and high-quality development for non-traditional or alternative forms of development containing private access or more than one main building on a lot. Both of these proposed changes above do not seem to align with the MDP policies. Policies propose a guideline to control of such development and not an elimination of such options. And we comment on the following proposed changes also. It is proposed to modify the definition of specific materials by removing metal panels from the list of authorized materials. In recent years, developers are increasingly seeking to use metal cladding on building facades, which is not permitted under the current definition. Since metal panels and metal cladding are similar in composition and different only in format, it becomes difficult to allow one but not the other. Cases where the promotion of metallic materials on the street facades of a building would exceed zone requirements will be subject to staff evaluation through a variance application, and it would be up to the Planning Advisory Committee to decide whether to propose material are adequate in context. We suggest further group discussion on this proposed change. Proposed changes: elimination of commercial nod in CM zone location of dwellings unit and interior parking garage. Several changes are proposed to lots located within the CM zone. Among other things, it is proposed to eliminate the commercial nod designation that applied to certain lots and to merge some of the design elements for the entire part of the CM zone. With the exception of lots located north of Yvonne Street, it is proposed to permit the establishment of dwellings units on all floors of a building, including the ground floor. Staff believe that greater flexibility outside of the commercially established areas on Dieppe Boulevard is necessary to promote property development in this zone. The requirement permitting dwellings unit only on the second floor or higher will be maintained for lots located north of Yvonne Street. It is also proposed that a parking garage located on the ground floor of a building or on a basement floor where the exposed floor exceeds 1.5 meters in height from the adjacent street grade should not be located closer than 5 meter horizontal distance from the exterior walls along the street facades of the building. This measure is intended to encourage minimal commercial or residential use where permitted on street facade. Regarding the above proposed change, why are the CM lots north of Yvonne not afforded the same flexibility? Again, Guy Bouchard and Louis Landry from Immeuble Perfection Realty.
Oui, lettre de Marcia et Roger Cormier.
Marcia and Roger Cormier, Mr. Melanson, I write to you concerning the proposed changes to Z10. My husband and I Myself, Levin Thomas, in a single-family dwelling. We hear that the city wants to make a change on Tom Street or R1 to R2. Here's our concern and comments to that. A long-term vision for our street. Semi-detached building. The current spot changes. St. Thomas is a very modern street, charming, as well as variety of style of a single-family dwelling, and not monotonous. They're built. This is why we decided to settle here. The value of our property will certainly suffer from it. And a building promoter watch the market, but the city should not make these changes only to please the promoters. What about the citizens? We, the long-term investors in our community. Why touch a street that is already established? I don't think this would happen in streets that are considered richer streets. We have multifamily dwelling on our street. Why the zoning change this year? Probably to meet the need of the building promoters. During the public presentation January 25th, I was extremely disappointed to hear all the councillors raise questions on behalf of the promoters. Councillor Boutier, she asked that the deadline be extended to defend the promoters. The others seem they're elected to be the voice of all the citizens. Yes, the city of Dieppe is expanding and must meet the need of all the citizens, not at the detriment of the citizen where it's nice to live.
Mayor and councilors, we have attached a copy of solicitor's letter regarding objections to the proposed amendments repealing zoning bylaw Z10 2017 and adopting bylaw Z10 2021. This letter covers the pertinent points regarding the institutional zoned land and its future development. We strongly assert our institutional zoned should remain status quo as the highest and best use is for multi-unit buildings. We purchased the property in good faith, fully knowing that we would be permitted to develop multi-unit buildings. This is not a minor change that is proposed, and it will most likely result in a large financial loss for our firm. Our firm's intention is to either develop the property or we will undertake to sell the land to a developer that is experienced, capable, and known for quality projects. In November 2020, we actually entered into an agreement to purchase with an experienced and reputable local developer. Based on his feedback, it seems that when he submitted proposals for review, city planning and development staff applied some bylaws changes before they were enacted. There seems to be a rush to change the bylaw, and in the times of COVID-19, it is difficult for owners, developers, staff, and council to meet and discuss the serious repercussions that will occur if the proposed zoning change goes forward. Please consider these points and keep the status quo. Lloyd Parker. Written objection to proposed amendment by repeal of zoning bylaw Z10 2017 and adoption of zoning bylaw Z10 2021. These written objections are being presented on behalf of our client, South Willer Developments Limited. South Willer, the owner of PID 706-02610, being 452 Amiro Street, Dieppe, the subject property. South Willer was incorporated in 2007 and has purchased and successfully developed properties across Atlantic Canada since then. Specifically, South Willer objects to the following proposed amendment. Elimination of use of multi-unit dwellings in institutional zone. It is proposed to eliminate the use of multi-unit dwellings in the institutional zone. Staff consider that this type of use, which is already allowed in several zones, is not compatible with other institutional uses in the zone. So location in the bylaw deleted. And proposed changes, addiction or of standards for multiple unit dwellings outside of CC and CM zones. In addition, the bylaw would indicate that the largest dimension of a new building, multiple unit building, that is its longest side, shall be oriented toward the public street. Location in the bylaw 3.441D, E, and F. South Wheeler purchased the subject property in 2015. Prior to its purchase of the subject property, due diligence revealed that multi-unit dwellings could be constructed on the subject property. After owning the subject property for a few years, South Wheeler had a site plan prepared in 2018, see attached Schedule A, and presented same to the city as part of a proposal for multi-unit dwellings development on the subject property, the original proposal. At this time, the city seemed very receptive to having high-density multi-unit dwellings on the subject property. Following the city's review of the original proposal, another meeting between South Wheeler and the city took place where the city presented a modified site plan to South Wheeler, see attached Schedule B. South Wheeler then explored the potential of selling the subject property to a developer, and in November 2020, an offer from a specific developer was received and accepted. The sale was conditional on the developer being able to receive necessary approval from the city. The developer had site plans prepared, see attached Schedule C and D, and presented same to the city. Discussions took place, and as recently as January 2021, François Légère, Planning Coordinator, City of Dieppe, commented in an email that we have reviewed the latest proposal for the development of the property at 452 Amiro. Overall, it appears to be going in the right direction. Within the same month that things were going in the right direction, and in the course of the developers reporting back to South Wheeler, the developer advised that the city indicated that it was intending to change the permitted uses in the institutional zone to exclude multi-unit dwellings. This seems like a pretty abrupt about face. Subsequently, the developer decided to not purchase the subject property. The proposed change to eliminate the use of a multi-unit dwellings in the institutional zone will, if adopted, have a significant negative effect on the value of the subject property to South Willow. South Willow has invested considerable time, money, and energy with respect to the sale and or development of the subject property. All such time, energy in relation to what was a permitted use when it purchased the subject property. Development of multi-unit dwellings, as above, discussed with the city along those lines, took place as recently as last month. As above, notwithstanding the various communications with the city, South Willow only obtained knowledge of the proposed amendment through hearsay from the developer. Given that the circumstances, this would seem contrary to council's policy to take appropriate measure to ensure that affected property owners are informed in advance of any proposed zoning amendments. Additionally, South Willow notes that council has, 1, set as objective with respect to managing development and the urban form to A, encourage new development in area that may be well served through existing municipal infrastructure and services, and B, promote development on high quality lands without causing negative impacts on the environment in order to ensure sustainable development. 2, set as policies and proposals with respect to growth management in the urban form, A, prompting building on vacant infill properties in current development areas, and B, guiding new development projects toward areas currently connected to municipal services. 3, set as objectives with respect to residential areas 2A, promote a range of housing categories in various areas of the city in order to meet varied needs regarding housing density, types, and location. And B, encourage reinvestment and infill development in mature areas. 4, set as a policy with respect to multiple unit dwellings development to direct the development of multi-unit dwellings along arterial or collectors or within close proximity to arterial or connectors as shown in the residential areas map. And 5, set a policy with respect to infill development in the residential areas to encourage residential development on vacant or underused lots in the residential areas when appropriate. It is to be noted as well that the subject property is on a main city bus route. Separate and apart from the significant negative impact that the proposed amendment would have on the value of the subject property and on South Willow, it is submitted that 1, the concepts set out above are relevant to the subject's property. 2, the highest and best use of the subject property would be the development of multi-unit dwellings. And 3, given the relative low-density development immediately to the north of the subject property, a multi-unit dwelling on the subject property would likely be far more appealing and far less intrusive than certain of the other permitted uses within the institutional zone, retail establishment, exhibition ground, etc. South Willow will also wishes to point out that institutional zones in many other municipalities continue to allow for multi-unit dwellings. As final matter, with respect to the proposed amendment relating to the longest side of a new multi-unit building being oriented toward the public street, South Willow submit that there is no reason for the amendment at this time, either for the respect to the subject property or more generally. Such an amendment would negatively affect many developers and developments without a sound reason to do so. South Willow therefore object to these proposed amendment as well. Yours truly, Actus Law Draw, Sean R. Dempsey, QC.
Lettre de Claude Poirier, président de
Claude
local.
Poirier, president of rental village Gauvin. Clerk, adoption of a new zoning bylaws at 10/2021. Hello, sir. We are writing today as owner of land to be developed in Dieppe. We own the property at the corner of Sorbonne Street, and we are in a planning phase in order to make the street this summer to start a multi-dwelling this fall. Planning that our development on the street would be completed in 2020. We started working on the concept of the land with our engineer as well as the city of Moncton in 2018. At that time, our intention was not to have a public street and only an entrance on Sorbonne Street and one on Gauvin Street, and to have a small block apartment. The city of Dieppe refused our design and asked that we would add an extension to Sorbonne Street that would attach to Gauvin Street. Following this, we changed the concept and we added the public street. The new concept was submitted and approved by the Planning Commission in June 2019. Even if our concept was approved, the city of Dieppe always make us understood that they would prefer that we would build big multi-dwelling instead of two-story building. And if we decided to maximize our property, the city would be happy to work with us to make the project interesting. Since 2019, we observed the residential market and made a lot of research. We attended expansion Dieppe presentation and as to the rental and the incentive that exists. We even contacted the city of Moncton in May 2020 to see if the city would be interested to work with us to expand the downtown region since we qualify for the incentive to be offered by the city. Our property is close to the limit and we therefore don't qualify for the incentive of the city to have multi-dwelling with underground parking. We receive a negative answer. Even without the incentive, we arrive at a conclusion it would be better to have multi-dwelling lodging. In August 2020, we contacted the city to present the plan of our building, 255-unit building, And we were planning to build, and after a positive answer in September 2020, our new preliminary plan of development to increase density to 262. After a preliminary evaluation, the city came back with a few minor comments that we dealt with. We continued with our plan, and we changed the outside to make sure that everything would meet the requirement of the city. And imagine a surprise when, after having followed all the guidelines and for the approval of December 2020, we are told that the law is being amended and that our concept would not be accepted on the new zoning bylaw. We were informed that if our concept of development is accepted under the old bylaw, it would be impossible. It would be possible to build under the old bylaw only if we obtain a permit before the date. February 2nd, 2021, we received the comments from the Department of Engineering of the City of Dieppe as for the concept that we submitted on December the 14th, 2020 for our concept. Therefore, we have to revise. It would take 1 to 2 weeks and resubmit to the city for the final approval, and the signing of the development could take 4 to 6 weeks. As you can see, the process, the approval process is long. You will know that our property on the side of a marsh would be very costly to develop, especially for multi-dwelling building. That was the main reason why our first plan was to make only rental dwelling. For that reason, that in order to maximize the property, we negotiated the agreement with developer who is willing to establish a partnership to create the street for the two multi-dwelling of 55 largely. Our plan consisted of starting our building this fall after our street would be completed, and we're still waiting for approval from the city of Dieppe. With the new zoning bylaw, we will have to start with a building number B, since this one will not qualify under the new Z10 2021 bylaw. We must therefore have a building permit before the zoning is changed. All of this seems simple, but for us, it means important additional cost to move the soil and to start building the building B before A. Included, you will see correspondence supporting what I just said. We understand that as the city grows, zoning bylaw must be adjusted. No problem. If the zoning bylaw is in process of change with very little notice from the city to us. Added to this, we're in the middle of a pandemic, which make all necessary changes very long. That being said, we are asking you to wait until the pandemic is over to make the change. In that way, with enough notice, the developer can be part of the discussion. Yeah, it's a very beautiful city that grows very quickly. We're proud to develop here, and we believe that it's by working together that we will see the biggest benefit for the city. We thank you greatly for your attention. Hoping to receive an answer, please accept my best regard. Thank you. There's still a few other letters to read. We will take a small 5-minute break, first of all, and even before that, a little bit of work for the municipal council. According to the city, the bylaw, it doesn't happen very often because it may be a first for me since 2012. Since I came back in 2012, municipal council that says to continue a meeting of after 10 o'clock at night. We need a resolution from the municipal council, I'm ready. I encourage you to entertain that motion, please. So if I have someone that could make the resolution moved by Councillor Cormier, seconded by Councillor Arsenault. So all those in favor say aye. Contrary minded, nay. So carried as presented. And on that, we'll take 5-minute break.
Merci.
So we're back. Patience. JC is back. The interpreter, yeah. I think it's Monsieur Melanson. We'll continue with the letters received. Here is a letter opposing myself to some changes to zoning bylaw for the city of Z10 presented on February the 8th, 2021. 1. Increase in the cost for adjustment, increase the cost from $300 to $450. I agree. To increase the cost of 50% is a lot. It will cost administrative way to deal with the request will certainly not increase 50%. When the investor makes such a request, it's normally to build a building, and that construction represents increase in taxes that is paid to the city. City already benefits a lot in taxes by the work of the investor. 2. To forbid the use of more than one main building on RHM and R3. I'm against that rule. 2 buildings or more on a given property can be viable. Each request should be dealt individually. Depending on the project and the land, it can make some nice development. Furthermore, if the land is narrow and on the road, but deep, it can be difficult to create a viable project if the site has to be on the public street. Continuation of existing projects should not be affected. 3. The addition of solitary on the main floor for residential building. Here again, each request should be dealt individually. Each property, the biggest one, have one or several garage having more than 100, 500 feet, square feet can be adequate. Thank you. Adino Savoie, President, Place RMS Limited. Letter from Sierra Enterprise Limited. Object 3.44. 1. Dear gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we want to tell that we are against the approval of 344.1, the positioning of a new building, multiple dwelling on whatever property. It is proposed that the longer side of that building be oriented towards the public street. As a developer, this change can potentially affect the viability of a project and even make such to prevent its realization, even though in most cases that orientation gave a more attractive outside view. The reality and the complexity of the development does not always allow us to do so, even though a variance request can be made. This requires more time during a critical time of the project. Your worship and members of council, I ask you to reject this amendment to the bylaw because of the concern that have been mentioned. Zero Enterprise Limited, yours truly. Next one, I am a resident of Albany Street for 42 years and previously on Gold Street. On Albany, most of the houses are occupied by the same family for a long time. It's only a small street, and we like it that way. Why damage it? We must not forget that Albany Street is dead end. The winter has arrived, and the snow plow come on the street's not easy for the driver of that snow plow. The end of the street, there is a schoolyard with a fence at the end of the street. The one who drives the snowplow cannot leave the snow in front of the barricade, since the driveway of the neighbor from across would be partially blocked and it would stop him from getting out. Also, we must not forget that there is a fire hydrant on our side of the lot and the fence. And the last house on the left side of Albany Street, the driver of the snowplow to put out the street on our property across from our house. the others don't do anything, should put it there. If there was urban residential on our street, what are you going to do with all that snow? We are against urban residences, the small street of family houses. Jean-Paul Frontenella on Albany Street. And now the last letter for tonight, that is sent by Thierry Comtois, representing with Ash Daly, Serge Gauvin, representing Serge Gauvin Enterprise. Amendment to Planning and Zoning Bylaw 2021. Planning Service, members of council, your worship, we wish to present our opposition to some proposal on Z 10 2020 on the following points. Fearing that these amendments will affect greatly our capability of pursuing some of our development plan, including the development of 1,000 unit in the years to come in our property located at 49 Heath Road. A development of 66 unit located at 316 Acadia Street. A development of 112 unit located at 266 Acadie Street. A development of 80 unit located at 253 Acadie Street. A development of 80 units located in the Belforêt sector. A development of 48 units on Leonel Street. Development of 500 units, 500 on Central Street. A development of 100 land on Marais School. The proposed amendment has a problem to forbid the possibility of having more than one main building on zone RHM and R3. Proposed to prohibit the possibility of three main building on RHM and R3. And it is proposed to encourage more traditional having side on face on public street. Amendment of text 3.1128. This brings a challenge as to the identification of the land. If the land is not square or rectangular standard, it is extremely difficult for a developer to follow a traditional model when each project is specific to a piece of land that is not conventional, allowing complete face on one street. The sharing of the water for two buildings, it has benefits and common garbage collection, share of driveway, share of green zone, and so on and so forth. So changes proposed. Multifamily zone outside the zone CC and CM. The present bylaw requires that multifamily has a public entrance that must face a public street. However, an exception was added for some type of building that doesn't have internal corridor, so no public entrance, instead of allowing that the unit face the street. Also, a 5 meter for pedestrian entrance is it proposing that the greater size be between the two. So the longer side be oriented towards the street. 4.44.1. A pedestrian connection at the cost of the developer can increase the cost of the project while being almost impossible in some cases to preserve a ratio of convenient in the same size towards the street can add considering the setback. This could force the developer to make a building in the form of L, which is not optimal as to the cost and the potential of the property. Sometimes the property facing traffic street are hard to rent and must be rented at a lower cost. This becomes an issue that have to try to have an optimal cost. To propose a requirement of conception in zone 60. It as it changes the conception for all the buildings in CC. I propose is to stop the projection of buildings such as a balcony and veranda and solarium. Uh, does not go beyond the wall. Furthermore, outside stairway would not be allowed. Also, the width of the side of the building must be at least 75% of the face of the requirement I propose to improve the appearance of the building in downtown. A lot were mentioned in the book in the guideline of 2017. Article 6, 2, 3, G, H, and I. Some property are hard to optimize considering, therefore, take the example of 330 Acadie Street. To have 75% of the frontage of water on a public street, it can vary by 10 feet between one side and the other way. It does not allow to maximize the environment of the site. Other proposed changes, the localization of garage and parking in the zone. It's proposed that zone for parking can be including the main floor at the southeast of Avenue Acadie in Zone CC. The staff believe that a greater flexibility is a must to promote the development in downtown Dieppe. Requirement to allow only rental on the second floor and up on the northeast of Acadia Street and on Rue du Marché. Propose that the garage on the main floor or underground and it is exposed at a height of more than 1.5 meter of the middle of the street. The building must not be located 5 meters horizontal away from the walls, from the face of the building, and the northeast side of Acadie Street to a certain height is too far from downtown, and there's densification to allow commercial is extremely difficult to attract a commercial in that sector when the traffic is high, and make it very hard to leave the area on the street. The apartment on the first floor facing the street are always a challenge to rent. The promoter should have the opportunity to put some inside parking while keeping an optimal outside if that is attractive and desirable. Remove the desirable of commercial is a good start, but to leave the commercial has challenges for the potential tenants, and the flexibility is high. Other proposed changes requirement concerning the architectural change in the intensification of the downtown. It is suggested that a building located in the intensification in CC zone incorporate at least one of the design characteristic that the floor above 13 feet, 44 feet must have setback of 1.82 meters, or that the building have a setback of a minimal width of 6 feet, 182 in order to segment every 9 meters. Service wants to promote the building having dynamic side and architecturally receiving H.2 HD. This increase the cost of the promoter instead of using the building. The number of square feet that is livable must be reduced. There's a mean of offering high quality footage without this measure or a proposed change the rental of and the garage in the building. Except for land on Champlain Street, it is proposed that the be on on every floor, including the main floor. The staff thinks that a higher flexibility is a must to promote the requirement to allow only apartment in the second floor would be limited on Chablis Street, something that we think is a must. It is also proposed that the weight of the side of the building must measure at least 60% of the side of the water giving on Chaplin Street or Acadie Street. And also propose that a parking garage at the main floor or on an underground floor where the floor is exposed at more than 1.5 meters the wall across from the street must not be located closer than 5 meters distance horizontal from the outside wall from the building. This measure wish to encourage a minimum of commercial use or if authorized on the frontage on the street. 6.3, 3B, and 6.36. For reason already explained above, we oppose to this change. And the promoter needs flexibility since each property is different. The fact of changing the commercial for residential does not solve the problem per se. To maximize the use of the property can be impossible to have 60% frontage when the configuration of land is narrower. The proposed changes specific material proposed to amend the definition by changing the metallic in the authorized. During the last few years, the promoter proposed more metallic material is not allowed in the present definition since the composition of metallic material are similar except the format becomes difficult to allow one and not the other one. In the case where the level of material metallic material would surpass what is required, this would be subjected to evaluation of the staff through a request for the diversification and see if the material decreases as requested. 2.11 specific material, what are the delay associated? The metallic promotions are very specific in the mid and long term, over and above offering a unique look. The choice of this product is of great importance. City should establish some acceptable level of this different product to understand the quality that is offered by some metallic product. It can be very costly. The city should have an opening towards different material, including the new vinyl, that can be of great quality so the promoter can use the optimal material the city must understand and educate itself on new options offered by the different producers. As of today, it's difficult to make a request of alternative material without adding the important propose on the incentive aspect, the changes brought to the incentive of the downtown called the commercial incentive, affecting the northeast on Acadie Street, affect only two property with vacant lot and available. The two properties are owned by the same group, having already started the planning for two respective projects of 66 apartment and 112 apartment. We feel inappropriate to reduce the incentive of density on that side of the street, considering that the planning might have been done differently, considering the reduction of incentive furthermore. If of such a this would reduce when we look on one side of Acadie where different old-fashioned can be destroyed to improve, embellish the city. Serge Gauvin. Thank you. There. That concludes the reading of the letter. Now we have four persons who ask to be allowed to speak. Once again, I'm telling you, you have 4 minutes to express yourself. So choose well the use of your time. Members of council will tell you that the mayor is very strict on the use of the time. This being Mr. Lloyd Parker. Mr. Parker?
If you wish to make some comments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors and clerks. It's been a long evening. And my comments will be fairly short. Our letter and the letter from our solicitor there, I think outlines our position on the removal of multi-unit buildings on that site on 452 Amiro Street. We believe that we can develop in a manner that would be very complementary to the area and the city and not have any major effect on the neighboring communities. We have developed a lot of properties in Atlantic Canada and have done an admirable job. The last property I developed in Dieppe was the former Mercer warehouse and Great Canadian Bagel on Hall Street. And I must say, I mentioned many times how reasonable the city of Dieppe was to deal with. So I thank you for all that. We like to, as we stated, keep the status quo, as it's been very tough to operate in these COVID times. We basically have been shut down for almost a year now. Otherwise, I think we would have had this underway by now. And I don't know how else to state it, just that we'd like to see the status quo, and I thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for taking the time and showing your concern. Much appreciated. Notre prochain interlocuteur, M. Claude.
Claude Poirier is the next speaker. Claude Poirier. Mr. Poirier, Claude Poirier, is he still here? Virtually, that is? No? Well, he's missing. We'll continue with Mr. Charles Poirier.
Bonsoir.
Good evening. Good evening. Do you hear me? Yes, go ahead. I'm surprised. I was not aware that I would be granted permission to speak. I'll be brief, nevertheless. You've had a long evening. Thank you for your patience with us. Other than to add that I agree with certain things that, especially as far as Boulevard Dieppe and the changes at the corner of Melançon Road, I agree with these changes. Now, as others have expressed some reserve, more than one building on a given property, especially for me. And I think that what is easier to accept are smaller projects, smaller buildings that would be 2 or 3 on a given property would be reasonable. What is happening to try and add for a week number of 3 times 12 or something like that, it's too hard to justify towards a public street for such small project. So we should squarely, but to forbid more than one building maybe we should look at a project as a whole and see how many units are included in the project per se. The last thing I want to add, if I may, on the appendix that shows a change of zone on Dieppe Boulevard is to incorporate some green zones, you know. I like that we preserve trees when we can, and it would be good for the community to keep a green space and the water way close to Melanson Road. Thank you for your attention. Sorry that I'm not better prepared. I didn't know I was going to talk. Thank you. If you have any questions, thank you. Thank you. Guy Bouchard. Good evening, Your Worship, councillors. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you for giving me the floor. It's been a long evening. It was number one. I would like to start by asking the councillors to table this. Number one, with the COVID and everything that's happening, it would be good if we could meet in person. I've had discussion with most of the developers. It means myself, Louis Landry, Lionel Godet, Serge Gauvin, Michel Leblanc, Jean Poirier, Claude Poirier, Joey Saunier, Bobby Duplessis, Denis Landry, and Stéphane Boudreau, Arino Savoie. So I think that it's probably time to put together a developers committee, as long as it's not a waste of our time. Because number one, I want to refer to Mr. Frenette's meeting that was done on August 25th. Mr. Frenette referred that he had talked to 7 developers, more or less. Mr. Frenette said that. It means in the last few weeks, I spoke to almost all the developers, and none of us were approached, if you want, for all these changes. So it means, number one, I think that there should be a reflection. We should look at all these changes. Some are good, some are not as good, some are not good at all. It means I wish that as a developer, I think that I'm quite an active developer, and I've been since the 1990s. My development is on Dieppe Boulevard. It means, commercially speaking, residential, affordable housing. Commercial, I deal with it. So I wish that the council would table this. I don't know how long it will take to be able to meet all together and give our point of view tonight. You've had opinions from residents, from developers. I think you should listen to what the developers are saying and maybe take the consideration of the recommendation we're making to you. That's pretty well what I have to say. Everything has been mentioned tonight, so I hope that the council will table it and implement a committee that will be put together to work with the municipality, but it should be taken seriously this time. Thank you to one and all for listening to us tonight. Thank you, and good evening to all. Now, members of council, we will finish the rest of the agenda. That is more common. We must go to item. Let's jump over number 8. A question from the public. We've had a good part of that. There was nothing else concerning public hearing number 9, adoption of the minutes of January 25th meeting. Moved by Councillor Cormier, seconded by Ms. Harris. No other question? No question. All those in favor of the adoption of the minutes for the meeting of January 25th, say aye. Contrary minded, nay. Thank you. Motion is carried. Now we'll proceed with motion and memorandum 10.1. Mr. Melanson, first file. My iPad decided to make an update. I will go. So we talk essentially about the purchase of a parcel of land on Central Street. I don't know if you have that. So when they made the underground alignment with what goes, we noticed that the trail touched a private property. So there's been discussion, and the developer, an option that we purchased on Central Street, we think it's a good acquisition, and we can develop it according to our value. So it's recommended to acquire that piece of land. That developer is with us tonight. I see he's still there. This being said, for the reading of the council of the resolution. Hello, Monsieur Thibodeau.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire.
Thank you, Worship. That council authorized the purchase of land on Central and identify as pin 7060268 at the cost of $4,256.25 plus HST from Tridal Corporation, and authorize over and above that this expense be taken from number 7-4-20-12-8950 reserve fund public utility property. I so moved by Councilor Thibodeau, seconded by Councilor Leblanc. On the question, Monsieur Godet. Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make a 2-minute history of that, because it's important in that in the spring, when they made a clear cut on Monsieur Poirier's land, they made a triangle that was public land. It belonged to the city of Dieppe. We were very aware that, especially that it dealt with the cyclist trail. We were told at that time there would be no cut closer to 10-15 meters from the bicycle trail. The city decided to sell that piece of land afterward to Mr. Poirier. And when it was sold, normally we thought that it would stay as was, but all the wood was cut, and we installed a kind of a hole to collect the water. Once we did that, we noticed that after having destroyed the trail, we find ourselves on a piece of land of the city that is too close to the city, and we want to buy out again. And at this time, it's all open. There's no tree. There's nothing. I would simply like to make sure that Mr. Poirier in the spring said he would plant some trees. We should bring back the nature, because the entrance of the bicycle trail on Central on both sides is destroyed. And I wish that the city would commit itself to push off or plant some trees on that side, so that we can give it a character of attraction for the bicycle trail. Thank you. Maybe to rectify some information, to clarify to the members of council, what we're buying here is not something we sold. It was part of the developer's property that was owned by the diocese. So we had a right of way on it, And the agreement that allow us to have a bicycle trail, because when the end came, we noticed that a little part of the trail was on the property of the developer. So it would have been to rebuild or change the trail with the help of the developer. Instead of rebuilding the bicycle trail, he allowed us to make an offer and to buy out the triangle. We simply need a parcel within the triangle. It's more interesting to make a change if we want to make something. Just to clarify that we did not sell that parcel of land to the developer previously. It's a history of who was the owner, and now we offer him the possibility of acquiring it for the need of the trail. For the reading of the resolution, we did. Sorry, it's getting late. It's been done by Mr. Thibodeau, seconded by Mr. Leblanc. So, this being said, if there's no other question, all those in favor say aye. Contrary minded, nay. Carried as presented. Now here we're at 10.2. At the PAC recommendation here with the project that is aligning for 2021 with Burgers Street and Melanson Road. A request to widen the part of the on public street. So it's recommended by the PAC that we change the widening of Melanson Road. For the reading of the resolution, Ms. Arsenault.
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
Your worship.
Que le Conseil accepte la
That council
recommandation
accept
du
the
comité
recommendation
consultatif en
of
matière
the Planning
d'urbanisme
Advisory
visant
Committee,
l'acceptation du plan
the
modificateur
accepting of the
provisoire du
modifying
lotissement Chemin
the
Melançon en date du
subdivision
13 janvier
as
2021,
of January
lequel
13,
prévoit
2020, which
l'élargissement d'une rue publique.
plan the
Je
widening
propose,
of the
Monsieur le
public
maire.
street. I so move. Moved by Ms. Arsenault, seconded by Councillor Leblanc. The question. No question. All those in favor say aye. Contrary minded, nay. Carried as presented. 10.3.1. Nomination to the board directors of the Greater Moncton International Airport. Quite simple. Who is Mr. Cormier? Just to renew. Thank you, Worship. That council appoint Elslinger, the board of directors of the International Greater Moncton International Airport for another mandate, ending on July the 1st, 2024. That's so moved. Moved by Councillor Cormier, seconded by Councillor Thibodeau. On the question, for information purpose, Monsieur Elslinger was the vice president of the board of directors, and we assume he's going to be appointed president following the renewing of his mandate tonight to be the new president of the board of directors of the airport. All those in favor say aye. Contrary minded, nay. Carried as presented. So we thank Mr. Elslinger for his fantastic work with a special situation that is rather difficult at the present time. Other nomination for the advisory committee and the planning, Monsieur Louis Leblanc. We want to renew it until December 30th. For the reading of the resolution, Mr. Boudier. Thank you, Worship. That council appoints Louis H. LeBlanc on the advisory, planning advisory commission for another term ending December 31st. Move and seconded on the question. No question? All those in favor say aye. And reminded, nay. Carried as presented. And that takes us to inquiries by the councillors. And you're all allowed 4 minutes, if I may say so. Who wants to be first? We will start with Councillor Godet. Mike would help. There. It took time, but I have nothing to offer. It's too late. Thank you. Mr. Boudier.
Merci. Ben moi, Ted va
Thank
peut-être
you,
prendre.
but maybe I'll take a few of your minutes, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. The last meeting, I forgot to mention. I have 4 points I'd like to raise. The whole situation of clear cutting. In the last few years, we've had development of new subdivisions. I wish that the city would look at having an ad hoc committee set up for the different parties involved to try and determine what is the challenge that we have, the alternative, and identify the solution to have a better natural environment, to keep our natural environment. So that was one ad hoc committee. I think it would allow our community to participate, also our business people. Leisure plan. A lot of citizens ask me what will be the timing for the choosing of the members of the committee, and to make sure, I'm convinced we're going to do it, to make sure that all our people will be represented in the choice of the choice for the recreation plan. Mr. Richard is there. He can probably answer your question immediately for that one. Yes. The deadline is February the 10th. We'll look at the possible number of persons to be on the committee. We want to give an opportunity to everybody, but we'll have the answer by the end of the week. Thank you. Thank you. On the proposed development plan, like all councillors, tonight we've had a lot of developers. Thank you. We heard all the letters that were written. I have several questions, but more for information purpose. So in the weeks to come, we will certainly have more discussions on that. I've mentioned this before. I would like to see where the city could look at a future development plan. What is our vision for the next 25 or 30 years? The standard as for the number of years. We talk a vision for Dieppe in 25 years. On the whole of our territory, who will be, not me, but for all of us, really, we have known Dieppe with a fantastic growth. It meets, and we see to see where we're at, where we would like to go. And it's important to identify model of municipalities that we'd like to aim, and how can we change this? What would we like to have in our municipality? And we participate, and we see a lot of municipalities are open. We have a development plan. Anyway, the vision would be what we've seen in the past, the plan, the development of the downtown and the whole development of the boulevard. You have 15 seconds. Next thing, Rotary Park. During the orange, I suggest the city to open the fence from 9 to 4, Monday to Friday. And if we have challenges with the parking, other municipalities, the parking is open. Let's put a security guard, let's hire. So I would like that we would look to open once again the Rotary Park. We have a better access to organize outside activities. Thank you. Monsieur Brideau.
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
Thank you, Worship. A long evening. I won't take long. I want to make a comment that I completely agree with my colleague, Mr. Boutier, to establish an ad hoc committee. We've seen tonight with all the comments and the frustrations, the rejection of our proposal. I want to see a committee be implemented. Let's call it a committee. Let's call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. But to allow the developer to sit down and discuss really this whole project that has been put forward up to now and to come with recommendations and ideas. They are on the market. They develop these projects, building, apartment, row houses, and everything else. I would like to see what these people want to recommend to us for improvement purpose. Your Worship, that's all I have for tonight. Definitely, I wish we would have a committee, whatever committee, sit with these people and share the improvement, whatever things that we want to put on the table, and we want to work together for the future. Thank you. Mr. Gadet. No, Mr. Gadet, no. Monsieur Thibodeau.
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
To your Worship, I don't have much for tonight, but I believe that I'm very happy that we are coming back to the orange zone at midnight tonight. And I think that we have to make sure not to fall in the excess and go back in the red zone. Good night, everybody. Monsieur Leblanc. Thank you, Your Worship. The process for the proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw. Will we vote on the bylaw as a whole? Because we won't all agree with the different proposed amendment. Can we split it up? Can we divide it? How will it work? Your Worship, as we explained at the beginning of the public hearing on February the 22nd and 2 Mondays from tonight, the staff will have in your package a summary of all the comments received tonight. There will be a table that will indicate what are the changes, what is legal and what is not. And similarly, we have a survey with the community that is underway right now. A survey of the kind of housing that the people are willing to have in their neighborhood, in their zone. All of that will be considered, and we will prepare a presentation. No vote will be taken before March 8th. If the people want to consider on the 22nd, there'll be an important step for the people to allow you to understand, ask questions. You haven't had the chance to ask so many questions tonight. The public was invited to participate. When I say the public, the citizens and the developers. Next meeting, it'll be your turn, your time, and we'll explain all of that to you. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you. That's it, Monsieur Leblanc. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Who's left? Ms. Sarchino.
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Vous savez que le mois de février,
You
c'est
know
le
that
mois de
February
l'histoire des Noirs.
is the
Donc,
month
je
of
voulais
the
juste le
history
pointer,
of Black.
dire que
I wanted
faire
to
attention à tout le
mention it.
monde, puis pas faire de
Let's take
discrimination
care
sur
of
personne.
everybody. Let's not discriminate on anyone.
J'avais mentionné plus
I
de
mentioned
bonheur que c'était le
earlier
1er février, la
that it
journée de
was
la GRC.
February the 1st,
Donc,
the
j'espère qu'ils ont eu une
RCMP
belle journée.
I hope they had a nice
Puis là, mais
day.
j'aimerais aussi vous dire
And I would
que
also
le
like to
centre
tell you
d'opération
that the
de
operation
Dieppe, qui se trouve
center
à être à
of Dieppe
100 rue
that
Fin,
is
ils vont
100
avoir
Fast Street.
le recyclage qui va être
They'll
fait.
have recycling that
Le
will
premier,
be
ça
done.
va être le 10
The
au
first
11
will
février.
be
Donc, c'est
February the 10th
cette fin de
to the
semaine qui
11th.
s'en vient.
This
Puis je pense que M.
coming,
Melançon peut peut-être nous en
and
parler
if we get
plus, mais
Mr. Melançon may be able to
sur
talk to us
Echo
more about it, but
360, là,
on Echo
il
360,
parle qu'il ramasse
they
des
say
gros
that they are
électroménagers, des produits électroniques, des meubles, des verres
picking up
triés,
furniture,
même des pneus jusqu'à 8 pneus par personne.
tires, even up to
Mais le
9
point est qu'il y a
tires per
plusieurs
people. But
choses
the
qu'ils vont
point is that
ramasser, puis ça
there's
va être de
different
midi
things
jusqu'à
that they
8
will
heures.
pick
So,
up. It'll be
peut-être que
from
M.
8 to
Melançon peut
9 o'clock.
nous
Maybe
expliquer que ça
Melançon can explain
ça remplacera pas
that will not replace
le trésor sur la rue ou le débarras, c'est-à-dire des personnes qui veulent se débarrasser
garbage of people who want to get
de leurs
rid
déchets sur le
of
bord du chemin, là, puis
their garbage
que
inside
les
of the
camions ou
street.
différentes
And
personnes viennent ramasser
the
ces
different
choses-là.
people
Ça
come
ne
to
remplacera pas
pick
ça
it up.
du
It won't
printemps puis de
replace that
l'automne, parce qu'on a
the
deux
spring
temps
and the fall, because there's two
qu'on
periods
permet aux gens de faire
that
ça.
we allow people to
Mais
do that.
on
But
devrait avoir de la
we
clarification
should
avec
have
ça.
some
Le
clarification
10 puis le
with
11
this.
février, le
February the
9
10th
et
and
10
11th,
juin, puis
June
le
the
13
9th
et
and 10th,
14
and the
octobre.
13th, 14th of
Donc,
October.
j'aimerais qu'on aurait plus de publicité
I wish we
là-dessus
would have
pour
more
clarifier
publicity
ça
on
avec
that
nos
to
résidents.
clarify that with the citizens. Madam Councillor, the initiative is done by ECHO 360. It does not eliminate special garbage collection. So we'll mention when it's time in the spring and the fall. And the mobile unit they set up in the port territory where ECHO's 360, but on 10 and 11 of February, from 10 to 8, people can bring their garbage, and it allows to get rid in the meantime. When you don't have a special collection, they can be, you can go to the operation center on Rue Street to bring their elements that they want to get rid of and bring to the appropriate place. What is eligible is well identified. I invite the citizens to look at it carefully to take advantage of the service that is offered by ECHO 360.
Oui. Oui, merci. C'est bien ça.
Thank you. That's it. Yeah.
C'est une pancarte qui a été bien commode à voir. Puis
This
c'est
is a
juste pour
sign.
pointer
It's
aussi
just
qu'il y a encore du monde qui met
indicate that there are
des
still
vieux
people
matelas ou des
who
matelas
put
qui
old
veulent se débarrasser, puis ils mettent ça à
they want to
côté
get rid of, and they
des
put it
boîtes à linge comme on
on
donne pour nos pauvres.
the side
Donc,
of
je sais que ça donne des
clothing
problèmes,
box
mais
that we give to the
peut-être que
poor.
là, ils pourront mieux
But
gérer
maybe
leurs
they can
déchets
better
ces
manage
journées-là.
their
L'autre chose que
garbage.
j'aimerais
The only
mentionner,
thing
c'est
I'd like
que
to mention,
le COVID-19 est encore présent parmi nous, puis
COVID-19 is
même avec
still
le
present
variant,
among
ça
us, and
devient
even with the
encore plus
variants, it
dangereux. Donc,
becomes
soyez
more dangerous.
vigilants, s'il vous plaît,
Be
puis faites
vigilant, be
attention. On
careful.
rentre à la jaune
Take
orange à
care.
minuit à soir.
We are entering the
Puis,
yellow
soyez saufs. Joyeux Saint-Valentin.
range tonight.
Ça sent bien
Happy
ça
Saint
aussi.
Valentine's. It's coming up. Thank you. Monsieur Cormier. Thank you, Your Worship. Simply to wish a happy Saint Valentine to one and all. And gentlemen, take care of your better half. Good evening. On that, good evening, everyone. Your worship, your worship, your worship. Point of order? Yes, go ahead. In the discussion or in the presentation that we've had earlier for the property on Central, I have a map from August the 10th, 2020 that was presented to the Municipal Council during the change of that zone. The triangle that I'm talking about is put as land for public purposes. In other words, it should not be used by the city because it was a piece of land for public utility. I wanted to clarify that. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm sure there'll be more discussion on the issue. Thank you. Good night.